Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Dare County Board of Commissioners Monday, August the 17th Board of Commissioners meeting. I'd like to open the meeting with a prayer invocation from the Reverend Spotswood Graves. Let us pray. Great King of the universe, Creator of all worlds, ordering the orbits of all galaxies and solar systems, knowing the intricacies of all matter, understanding the processes of all life, we bow in awe, beholding our lives gathered here, conducting the affairs of Dare County. We thank you for constitutional government, the privilege of elections, and for these men here who take seriously the responsibility entrusted to them. Shower upon them wisdom to see the needs of all of us. Increase their hearing for the small voices long ignored. Help them weigh the options of all. We pray for healing in our community and nation, healing of COVID-19, of hatred, disrespect of race, sex, and learning. Give needed strength to those who serve the sick and dying. Comfort the sick and the grieving. We lift up our president and all who serve our country. We pray for all in uniform. Bless our nation as we decide who will represent us. Protect the processes of election, that our election be just, fair, and peaceful. Thank you for all willing to serve us in elected office. Bless our nation with justice, equality before the law, truth and compassion. Come near each person in anxiety, pain, and grief. Show us how to be good neighbors to each person. Keep us, O God, in your long-suffering mercy. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. May we stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we get into each item, I'd like to, it's with a heavy heart, that announced that Reverend Tom Murphy passed away yesterday. And I'd like for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Tom Murphy was the founding pastor of Roanoke Island Presbyterian Church and a lifelong model for civic engagement. He died peacefully at home in Rodanthe just yesterday. He was 85 years old, and he lived a truly remarkable life, always serving others. Murphy wrote in 1989, and I quote, "I stood within the church looking generally outward. The convictions early and has never left that church must live for others in a broken world. The church must make a difference where it is. The church must serve its community, not just its own members." The creed was applied during Murphy's 15-year ministry here on Roanoke Island, and the church, where the church's founding mission was providing child care for infants and toddlers for high school age parents. The mission later expanded, and Tom retired from the Roanoke Island pastorate in January 4 of 2004. I can remember 8 years ago sitting up here, 6 years ago, when the board changed leadership, and Tom sat out right about where our director of finance is sitting right now. And Tom, if you knew Tom, he didn't mind telling you what he thought.
He's Irish.
That he was, Danny, true. And he'll tell you in a heartbeat what he thinks. But he also was very respectful. He was also very attentive. And he knew what was going on. And he made a comment, I think the vice chair will remember this, and it's when the leadership of this board changed from, and I don't want to get into partisans, but the board changed in leadership. And he made a comment that day under public comment. I don't trust you guys. Remember that, Vice Chair? Yeah. I don't trust you guys. Well, it's been about, I want to say 6 months or 8 months ago. He called me on the phone and he said, Bob, he said, I want to have lunch with you. And I said, Tom, absolutely. I'd be more than glad to have lunch with you. Mary Helen Goodloe, his better half, said, Tom, don't go down there and beat up on Bob. And Tom said, oh, no, I'm not. Had one of the best lunches I've ever had with the opposition. And I was the opposition 6 years ago. Tom said, Bob, I was wrong. He said, y'all have done this. Coming from a pastor, it meant quite a bit to me. He said, y'all have done a hell of a job. And I'll never forget that. He said, I respect what this board has done, and I respect you as a human being and as a person and as a leader. And I'll never forget that, Mary Helen, if you're listening. That meant the world to me. Throughout his ministry in Dare County, Murphy served the community to make a difference in a broken world. He chaired the board of directors of the Outer Banks Hotline, where the organization built its existing building. He served to organize 2 Dare County State of the Child Conferences. The first one resulted in nurses and resource officers for every school in the county. Murphy co-chaired the first board of directors of Children of Youth Partnership in Dare County. He has served on the Citizens Advisory Council for his home health and hospice. For over 25 years, Tom was the pastor representative on a permanency planning team for Child Protective Services. He also served on the Emergency Food and Shelter Board, another assignment with the Division of Social Services. Murphy co-chaired the Dare County Task Force on Higher Education that culminated in establishment of the UNC School Coastal Studies Institute right here in Skyco. Murphy was appointed to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, a position he had held since 2003. He also served as an election worker for about 10 years, starting in June of 2008. Reverend Murphy came to Roanoke on Hatteras Island, to Rodanthe on Hatteras Island in 1986, along with his spouse, Mary Helen Goodloe Murphy. They quickly joined the Chickamauga Volunteer Fire and Rescue Department as firefighters. And Tom was one of the 4 original members of the department's water rescue team. Tom, you will be sorely missed. God rest your soul. The second item I have this evening under Chairman's comments, I'm jumping ahead, Bobby. I'm jumping to item 1 anyway, so sorry about that. Most of y'all are aware about every 2 weeks I try to do a video with respects to what's going on with COVID. And part of my comments last week had to do with 5 steps in managing your stress. All of us today, none of us would have ever have imagined 6 months ago that we would have to be dealing with a pandemic in the United States of America, and dealing with all the situations that we have before us. Our country needs a healing. We need to work with one another. We need to respect one another. I put together a few thoughts that I feel like that perhaps maybe help each and every one of you out there to deal with the stress that's in our lives today. Let me list them individually. And I mentioned these in my video. Take a break. Number 1, take a break. Find a balance of exposure to news that works for you. It's particularly important to our children. We need to limit their exposure to the media and provide age-appropriate information to them. Whenever possible, disconnect physically and mentally. You know, put a puzzle together. I just had a friend of mine on Facebook email me just last night a puzzle that she put together, and it was phenomenal. It would have taken me 3 or 4 months, the detail in that puzzle, but you'd be surprised what that might do to you mentally. Play a board game. When's the last time you played Monopoly? Remember that game? As kids growing up? You know, do a little treasure hunt with your kids. Tackle a project in your garage. Maybe your garage needs cleaning up, straightening up. Reorganize something. You know, all those spices in your cabinet. Put them in there alphabetically or whatever. Just do a little project. There's a movie out there that it was kind of scary. You know, start a new book that's unrelated to COVID. Take a break. Number 2, connect with others. All of us have been disconnected for 6 months or more, going out to eat, doing different things, getting together with family, going to parties, doing different things. Connect with them. It's important to connect regularly. Reach out to your family members, friends, colleagues that you haven't, old classmate. I did a virtual call with 6 of my high school buddies last Saturday. We had not seen each other in 50 years. We graduated in 1965, Churchland High School, had not seen each other in over 50 years. We did a virtual, it was unbelievable. Got together, then I actually went up to Virginia and met with them, but I wore my mask. We sat in my ex-brother-in-law's home and socialized. We had plenty of social distancing, kept our mask on the whole time, but it was just unbelievable, unbelievable. So connect with members and friends and colleagues. Do it by phone, do it by text, do it by FaceTime. Make sure that you're checking in on those who are alone. I did that just this afternoon with my mother, who is in Spring Arbor. Haven't seen her since March, as far as close-up, one-on-one to visit. Rob, they now have a system there where you can call, and they just got it a couple of weeks ago. Headphones you put on and a microphone, and I did that this afternoon with my mother. It was phenomenal. I have not spoken to my mother since March because I've been standing outside, looking in the window, writing messages on paper plates. It's horrible, absolutely horrible. Today was phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Connect with others. Number 3, exercise. Gyms are still closed. Social distancing guidelines are in place. It's still possible to get in some exercise. Walking, running, playing with your kids and pets in the yard can help release endorphins and maintain a positive attitude. Ask Commissioner Bateman. Gets up 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. He's riding by my house 6 o'clock in the morning on his bicycle, doing 18, 20 miles. Does that daily. Exercise. You can do those in the own comfort of your home. My wife does yoga. She gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I get up a little after 5, and she's in the den doing her yoga. So exercise is good. Exercise regularly. Number 4, maintain a healthy diet. Now, that's tough to do during COVID. I had lost 48 pounds. I think I've put 25 of those 40 back on during COVID, Vice Chairman. So I need to get back in gear. Stress can certainly affect both your eating habits and your metabolism. The best way to combat stress and emotional eating is to be mindful of what triggers stress eating to be ready to fight the urge. Keep healthy snacks on hand to help nourish your body. Arm yourself nutritionally to better deal with your stress. Maintain a healthy diet. And number 5, get sleep and rest. The ever-changing news environment can create a lot of stress. Stress that gets amplified when you don't get enough sleep. Avoid stimulants like alcohol, caffeine, and nicotine before bed. You still find yourself too stressed to sleep? Consider developing a new bedtime routine, including a long bath or a cup of caffeine-free herbal tea. Planning for tomorrow's earlier in your day can help alleviate stress related to what's to come. Try to practice those five steps to manage your stress. It's difficult to do, but we need to do it to stay healthy. Take a break, connect with others, exercise regularly, maintain a healthy diet, and get sleep and rest. I hope you all can attempt to try to do some of that to alleviate the stress in your life. Because with what's going on in our country today, I can understand why there's so much stress in individuals' lives. With that being said, County Manager, that completes the Chairman's comments.
Chairman, next on our list, we've got the appointment of the tax assessor and the tax collector. As you know, our longtime tax assessor retired recently in Hosey. The person that was in place to replace her, tonight you all will, someone should make a motion to appoint Hosey as the new tax assessor, Hosey Wilson as the new tax assessor, and upon that approval, then Cheryl will swear him in.
Move to appoint Hosey.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor by the vice chairman to appoint Jose as, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Jose, you get what you asked for, brother. Come on up.
Congratulations.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Right hand. Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you. All righty. I, Hosey E. Wilson III, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties as my office as Dare County Assessor, and I will not allow my actions as County Assessor to be influenced by personal or political friendships or obligations. So help me God.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Jose, we're fortunate for you to step in and to take that. And I know personally, you have really worked hard for Dare County and your expertise in that field. We couldn't be more pleased, and we're very fortunate to have you. And I want to say congratulations and thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity I've been given. I'd like to thank my predecessor and my friend Greta for the development of a very high-functioning, reputable office. I'd like to thank my staff for their hard work and support. Most of all, I'd like to thank my family who couldn't be here today, my wife Emily, my sons Hosey and Bond, and I would like to thank my mother-in-law who recently passed away for her dedicated support. So she would love to be here, but she couldn't, and but I know she's looking down. So
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you, Jose. Great, Jose.
Next, Mr. Chairman, we need to reappoint Becky Huff as the tax collector. This is something that we have to do every 4 years, and this is her 4th year. And so, Becky, if you would come forward as well, please.
Good evening, Becky. Good to see you.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
And we need a similar motion.
Yes, sir. The motion.
So
Motion
moved.
to appoint Becky Huff.
There's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Bateman to reappoint Becky. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Tobin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
I, Rebecca Huff, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as Dare County Tax Collector, and that I will not allow my actions as tax collector be influenced by personal or political friendships or obligations. So help me God. Thank you.
Becky, hold on, once again, we're blessed to have the talent that we have in Dare County working for us. Becky, what was our last percentage was 99 point what?
2-4.
Yeah,
I'm
unbelievable.
getting ready to give you the settlement
Yeah.
after all this is over.
99.24% of tax collections throughout the entire county. That is incredible. We've always had good return on that and good work, and it's all because of the work you and your staff do, and we couldn't, once again, we're fortunate to have the talent working for us in Dare that we have in you, and thank you for what you do, and please express that to your staff, how much we appreciate the
I
work
will.
that
I
they
have a
do.
fantastic staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Mr. Chairman, this isn't an appointment that you all made, but as you know, recently our elections director stepped down, and the Board of Elections and the State Board of Elections have appointed Jackie Tillett to be our new elections director. She's here tonight with her daughter, I think, is here with her. And if you'd come forward, Jackie, to be sworn in as well.
Move to appoint Jackie Tillett, please. I wanted to get in quick. Need a second, fellas.
You don't need, this is
All right.
your appointment.
Well, I want it on the record that I made that motion anyway.
I, Jacqueline J. Tillett, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of my office as Dare County Board of Elections, and I will not allow my actions as director to be influenced by personal or political friendships or obligations. So help me God.
Danny's already made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair and Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Jackie, a lot of people out here don't know this. Jackie's got 35 years of service with the county, and she's only 40 years old.
Absolutely.
You know, I don't know how in the world she's got a daughter so pretty and as young as she is, but Jackie is just a phenomenal human being.
Thank you.
I've had the privilege of knowing her for, I don't know, probably 10 years or more, Jackie or whatever, when I first came over here. But just has an unbelievable personality that is totally respectful of every human being she comes in contact with. I've never, ever had a conversation with her that she wasn't very upbeat, very positive, and we, once again, Jackie, we're fortunate. We're fortunate to have you, and God bless you for
Thank
what you do.
Thank you. I appreciate all the support and the confidence.
You do a great job.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
You
you.
really do.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Jackie.
you.
Chairman, I would add one thing. Jackie has hit the ground running. She and Kelly have been going wide open in the office to keep us up to speed. And while there's a lot to do and a lot more to do, I think we're on good, sound footing, and I think we're delighted that she's there to keep us going. And I think we're going to be fine with our election coming up because of your leadership and because you know what you're doing in there. So
Well, I can tell you
Thank
one
you.
thing. If you ask her a question, you're gonna get the answer right away.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
And she ain't gotta go over here and say, wait a minute, Mr. Chairman, let me see if she knows it, just like that. I can tell you she knows it backwards and
And
forwards.
if I don't, I say, hold on,
Yes, you
get back with me.
got it, yeah, and that you do. God bless you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that brings us to item 3 on the agenda. And item 3 is the presentation of the county service bins. This morning we have, oh wow, we have quite a few. First on our list is Deputy Sheriff Master Officer Edward Cottrell. He's been with us for 10 years. Ed has been with the Sheriff's Office for approximately 17 years, but he's been in and out after a while working with government contractors out of the country. Over the past 10 years, Ed has worked patrol. About 5 years ago, he became the SRO for the First Flight Middle School, where he did an outstanding job. He was even written about for the various things he was doing as their resource officer. He spent last year at First Flight High School, where he also enjoys his duties. Ed's a great guy, does a wonderful job at whatever position he works in, and we're looking forward to having him for several more years. So thank you, Ed, for your work and your 10 years of service. Next is Breanne Anderson. Breanne is an emergency medical tech paramedic. She's been with us for 10 years as well. Bree was hired as an EMTA in August of 2010. She decided to increase her certification level and enrolled in an EMT intermediate and paramedic class in 2018. She completed the training class and became a paramedic in 2019. Bree loves spending time in the water with her family or spending her time four-wheeling. Her love of children extends past her own, as she is one of the first to volunteer to help with our annual Toys for Tots and Lights of Christmas charity events. She has been instrumental in our children's education programs, and as a result, countless children in Dare County have learned about EMS from her. Bree also serves as a field training officer, and she assists in the orientation of new employees to the department. So thank you, Bree, for your 10 years of service to Dare County. Next is Evelyn Berry. Evelyn is a social worker, and she too has been with us for 10 years. For the last 10 years, Evelyn has provided services to the citizens of Dare County by way of social services. Evelyn started her career with DSS as an economic services worker, moving on to adult services and then to child welfare services. Eventually, she found her way back to adult services, and we are forever thankful that she did. Evelyn works tirelessly to make sure her clients' needs are met and adults are safe in their home and community. Evelyn is professional, always representing our agency in the best possible light. She is caring, compassionate, and dependable. Thank you, Evelyn, for your years of service, and we look forward to many more years. So thanks to Evelyn for her 10 years of service. Next is Jonathan DeWeese. Jonathan is a land transfer supervisor, and he has 10 years of service with the county as well. Jonathan started with the county in August of 2010 in the recycling department as an equipment operator. He has since been promoted to the landfill transfer supervisor. He's been instrumental over the last 10 years in storm debris pickup and is highly valued for his leadership as well as his mechanical abilities. The landfill has made great strides with him in charge and has been noted by both the state inspector as well as the engineers about how well the landfill is doing. So thank you, Jonathan, for your 10 years of service. Next is Ray Owens. Ray Owens is a detention assistant shift leader, and he celebrates 15 years of service today. Ray's a dedicated family man who is a strong and thoughtful leader of his family. He brings those same attributes to the job at the detention center. Ray can always be counted on to do whatever is asked of him, and you know he will do the task to the best of his ability every time. We're thankful to have Ray as a part of our team at the detention center and look forward to working alongside him for many more years to come. So thank you, Ray, for your 15 years of service. Next is Constance Daniels. Constance is a custodian, and she has 15 years of service. Connie joined the health department in August of 2005. She always goes above and beyond to help others. In her role at the health department, we almost always come into contact with Connie on a daily basis. Her desire to help others sets her apart. She is kind and selfless and is never happier than when she is doing things for her colleagues. Whether it's a flower, a wreath during the holidays, or a piece of candy on your desk, you know Connie's there. She's also a doting grandmother and loves to spend time with her grandchildren. So thank you, Connie, for your 15 years of service to Dare County. Next, we have Jeffrey Mitchell. Jeff is an emergency medical tech captain with 20 years of service. He was hired as a paramedic in August of 2000. Through his tenure with EMS, he was promoted to lieutenant in April of 2003 and captain in January of 2017. Upon being hired, he and his family moved here from upstate New York. His wife is the guidance secretary at First Flight High School, and his two sons developed their sense of public service from both of their parents. Jeff's oldest son, Ryan, is an elementary school teacher in Hendersonville, and his youngest son, JC, is a K-9 officer with the Nags Head Police Department. Jeff has been the lead person working with our vendors for the design of our ambulances. It is through his efforts in this arena the department has ensured their needs are being met while being financially responsible. He also works with our uniform vendors with the same keen eye, making sure our uniforms are professional, functional, and he's always minding the economic impacts, protecting the county's dollars spent as if it was his own. So thank you, Jeff, for your 20 years of service to Dare County. Next is Elizabeth Beth Fiedler. She's a library assistant, and she celebrates 20 years of service. Beth assists customers in person and over the phone at the Kill Devil Hills location, the busiest of the 8 libraries in the regional library system. She has particularly good interpersonal skills and deals with our very diverse clientele in a friendly and individualized manner. She also oversees the large volume of repairs and mending of old and damaged library books, which stretches our dollars further by greatly extending the practical lifespan of these materials. Beth also manages bookings for the community meeting room. She gets along well with everyone and is well-liked and regarded by her coworkers as well as the public. Thank you, Beth, for your 20 years of service to Dare County. Next is Barry Peel. Barry is a wastewater treatment operator with 20 years of service. A water treatment plant operator with 20 years of service. Barry started working at the Roanoke Island Water Treatment Plant the Roanoke Wave Salvo Water Treatment Plant in Rodanthe on August 6, 2000. He worked at Rodanthe Wave Salvo for 1 year, then transferred to the Cape Hatteras Water Treatment Plant. He spent the last 19 years as a shift operator. Barry maintains a North Carolina Seawell certification for operating water treatment plants. Thank you, Barry, for your 20 years of service to Dare County. Next is Walter Kevin Dupree, Deputy Sheriff Captain. He celebrates 25 years of service. Kevin is about to get to the finish line, and we truly enjoy having him here. Kevin runs the CID division and is the sheriff's go-to guy with situations that are troublesome and may take time to get done. He is very knowledgeable and also sworn in with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which gives us a whole new resource. I'm very thankful to have him here, and he's definitely an asset to the sheriff's office. He is involved with his church and with other outreach entities, which makes him an all-around good guy and well-liked by his peers. Thanks, Kevin, for your 25 years of service to Dare County. Next is Katharina Bracey, Technical Services Superintendent, and she celebrates 30 years of service. Kathy was hired at the Water Department in August of 1990 as the administrative assistant to the Water Director, who later became the Utilities Director. She was in that position for 9 years. She was then selected as the Information System Technician. Kathy was in charge of supporting and maintaining all IT-related equipment from phones all the way up to our supervisory control and data acquisition systems at each water treatment facility. In 2006, Kathy was promoted to Technical Services Superintendent and supervises instrument technicians, the plant mechanic, and the metering infrastructure coordinator. This division supports the computer systems, both the mechanical and electrical systems, as well as the water metering systems for the water department. We thank her for her 30 years of service to Dare County. Mr. Chairman, that would be our service pins for this month, and we appreciate all the service that these individuals have provided to the county.
Incredible. It's 185 years, 16.8%, 16.8 years average for those employees. That's incredible.
When we look at these times, and you have some 30-year people, and we just had somebody here who was 35 years. Yeah. We really revel that we can keep people and retain them, and that they continue to stay with us and work for us and provide these great services. It makes what we do much easier, but it also provides much better service to our community. And so we're really proud of that and proud of these folks that provide these services to us. Chairman, next on the agenda is public comment, and wait just a second for that.
Yes, sir.
Let's see if we get any emails.
Okay. Board, you ready? Okay, County Manager?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, that leads us to item five on the agenda, and that's the annual settlement by the tax collector, and Becky's here to make that presentation.
Welcome again, Becky.
Thank you. Good evening again, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. Before I start, I just wanted to say thank you for making all of the hard decisions you've had to make over the last 6 to 8 months of everything that's been going on, and it can't be very easy, and we all do appreciate the work that you put into making those hard decisions. I'm here tonight, obviously, to give you the settlement for the 2019 taxes. By state statute, I'm required to provide you with all of the information. And in your packet, I'm just going to make this very short and very sweet. Due to the COVID, the shutdown of the economy, shutdown of the bridges, people not working all across the country, and a lot of our property owners are across the country. You know that we have a very large portion that are out of the area anyway. I suspended enforced collections on delinquent taxes. The taxes went delinquent in January. Normally between January 6th and the time June 30th, we are hot and heavy doing our enforced collections, which is attaching bank accounts, attaching paychecks, contacting people, working out payment plans. We do all of that. When all of that stopped and the economy shut down, I stopped the enforced collections because I didn't want people to have to decide whether they were, people not to be able to afford groceries because I was taking their tax money at this point in time. So we stopped that for about 8 weeks until the unemployment money started running again, and people received their stimulus, which was about 8 weeks. We were into like mid-May before I felt comfortable enough that enough people were receiving their unemployment money. And I did contact everyone before we started enforced collections again to make sure they were okay to start making their payments again. We've had a lot of people who still kept making payments even when I had stopped doing the enforced part of it. They were still making payments because they wanted to stay on their payment plans. With that being said, our collection rate for June 30th was 99.24%. Last year's collection rate was 99.48%. Of course, we're down a little bit this year because of the COVID and stuff. But the collection rate as of this morning was 99.41, which means we've collected another $103,000 since June 30th, and we are still collecting. We just sent out letters for small balances, which all of that stuff normally goes out March, April, and May. So we are still actively working on collecting for it. This last year, we have instituted where you can receive your tax bills online. It started a little bit last year, but we did a whole lot of PR with it this past year. We have over 1,100 people who are signed up to receive their tax bills online as opposed to the paper tax bill. And that gives them, you don't have to worry about the post office. You have your hands on your tax bill. It's just another method to get the information to them as quickly as we can. And that's open for anyone who wants to do it. The application's online, or they can call our office. We also did online occupancy and food and beverage, where you can create your own monthly statement and pay your bill online, which has been asked for several years from our citizens. With a lot of help and me fussing at Sally a whole lot over the years, I'm sorry, Sally, we are now able to do electronic check option, which is only 35 cents, as opposed to a fee of 2.75% of the total of whatever you're paying. You can do that for your tax bills, for your water bills, for your occupancy and food and beverage. If you want to pay by electronic check, it's only 35 cents. And that has been asked for a lot from our citizens, and we finally were able to find a vendor that would be able to do everything that we needed them to do. Chairman Woodard, you'll appreciate this. The 2020 tax bills that are going out, which they're not going, because the IRS and the Department of Revenue extended their deadlines. You guys graciously extended the deadline for listing until June 30th, which means we are several weeks behind on data, receiving the data so that we could enter it to create our tax bills. The tax bills were just created. I just finished them, Hosea and I just finished them Friday night. They're going to the printer hopefully sometime mid this week to be out by, hopefully early by next week. The tax bills will be sent out. By state statute, we're not actually required to send tax bills out. Of course, we send them because people would need to know them, but that relieves us of having the issues of the post office didn't deliver it. They're due September 1st and not delinquent until after January 5th, so people still have the 4 months to pay them. But this year, in our 2020 tax bills, we have a breakdown of personal property. We were able to get it done.
Thank you.
So it took some doing, and we finally had enough, the software availability to make it work this year. So that's in there for you. And on the consent agenda for the next meeting. Normally at this meeting, when you do when I give you the annual settlement, you charge me to collect the taxes for the next year. Well, I have to give you what the amount of the taxes are. I did not have that available in time to get it onto this agenda. So it's just a consent agenda item for next board meetings, but I wanted you to know ahead of time that that's what that is for. That's the second part of what my settlement is for. But because we didn't create them and finish them until Friday, I didn't have the actual numbers to give to you for that part. I don't think there's really anything else. The Zacchaeus Legal Services for our foreclosures, over the course of from 2002 to 2019, the years that they've been collecting for us since 2014, and they have collected for us $2,179,000. It does not cost us anything to do that. All of the fees that are incurred are applied back to the parcel that's being foreclosed on. And that is ones that have gone off to foreclosure and have either been sold or people have paid before they got to the sale. But once we send it off to them, we no longer do any collections on them. So it frees up my staff. And we have very stringent sets of guidelines as to before we send anybody off to foreclosure. They have to be delinquent at least 2 years, not answer any of our emails or phone calls, and we do everything we can before we get to that process, obviously, but there are some that we still have to do that too. And they collected $269,000 for us just this year. And as you can see on the last page of this, just some of the things that we deal with. We still have parcels that are in bankruptcy that we have no say-so as to whether we can collect on them until they come out of bankruptcy. And we do still collect money through debt set-off, which is the North Carolina Department of Revenue income tax refunds and lottery winnings that are due. So anybody that has a delinquent tax that we can, and it's also good for the EMS and the water billing and all of that, where we can collect monies due to taxpayers if they owe us money. So all of the old motor vehicle billers are out there, and we've collected with $2,000 this year. So it's not a lot, but every little bit helps at this point. That doesn't cost us anything. So do you have any questions or
Yeah,
anything
Becky,
else?
that's still incredible, 99.47 with what we've been going through, through the country with COVID is still incredible. One question I had, the second and final notice is mailed. What's that typical? I see over 4,000. Is that a little bit, is that higher than normal years?
No, some years it's high 3,000, some years it's a high 4,000s. It just depends. We have a lot more tax bills. We've been adding with the boat that the assessors went through, and they found all those boats those create second notices when they don't pay those. Gotcha. That kind of thing. That's why it's up a little bit higher this year, because they had a large increase in parcels with the boats and stuff that they had found.
Yeah. Great work. Just incredible work.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I was with you, Mr. Chairman. I saw 4,000 and I thought, how many of those might be actual houses or homes?
A lot of those are houses and homes, but those are all people we've already contacted too. A lot of those people are in payment plans, but we have to send them a second notice. So even if they're in a payment plan, they're still going to get their second notice, and it's going to tell them where they're at in their payment plan, but we're still doing a payment plan with them.
So we're collecting 99.5% and we still have over 4,000?
No, those were second notices that went out in February.
So these may all have been paid?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Those are just the second notices that go out after they go delinquent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We have 47,000 parcels that get billed out. So.
That's a lot.
Yes, it is a lot.
It's a lot.
Becky, I appreciate all you're doing an excellent job.
Thank you.
One question I asked you last year, the Airbnbs, the rent by owners, is there any kind of behind the scenes thought process how we can get some of that money from those people?
Airbnb and VRBO are currently paying us. They now, both of them pay us to, as of November, Airbnb has been doing it for a few years, and VRBO started in November to submit the funds to us. They collect and they submit the funds to us. They had enough pressure from enough different states, us being one of them, to get them to require. There's several states that they do that for, and we are one of them. So we do get the money straight from VRBO now.
Is that itemized? Do we know where they
No, sir.
are?
No.
None of them are itemized.
Just
They're
the
not-
money?
Yeah, they're not itemized by the realty companies either.
Okay. With, the push for government efficiency and stuff, I mean, the temptation is just to go everything online and make our constituency go online and look. But I realize that we have an older population. Some people don't have emails and they don't have capability. You got any personal thoughts, if I dare to ask?
About,
Just whether or not, if we ever needed to go that route, or it's just steady as she goes, the way we're
we
doing
take
things.
it any way. We do electronic, we do paper, we have a Dropbox out front. We will take it any way people can get it to us. We're not requiring anyone to do anything specific. We have all the options available, and we will always have all the options available. For paper, for electronic, occupancy and food and beverage can do paper, they can do the electronic, they can, whatever works best for each individual person.
I guess in the big picture of, the fact that we have a thriving, vibrant economy, a little bit of postage just to be of service is of no consequence.
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
and at this point, like I said, at this point, we do understand we have a lot of elderly people, and a lot of people don't have access to computers on a regular basis. A lot of people don't know how to use a lot of the computers. So I don't want to ever make that they have to do it that way. They always have an option to do either way, whatever works best for them.
Really insightful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Great job.
Thank you.
Super, fantastic,
Thank you.
Becky.
Have a
Thank you
good
so
evening.
much. County Manager?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That brings us to item 6 on the agenda, and this is a Dominion Energy proposed new transmission line, and Robert Richardson and others are here to make that presentation.
Robert, welcome this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak to you. So Commissioners, Chairman Woodard, you and I spoke on the phone, Vice Chairman Overman, County Manager Outen. Thank you for giving us a few minutes to address you today. My name is Rob Richardson. I work for Dominion Energy and the Electric Transmission Group. 3 of my colleagues, the remaining 3 are here with me for support. We're here to share some information with you and as best we can answer your questions. We did have a PowerPoint presentation. Are we able to view that?
There we go.
Very good.
I don't think you have to point it, just kind of click it.
Click it.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, very good. We have begun survey work. Let me start here. We're in the early stages of researching the feasibility of several routes for a new electric transmission line. We've begun survey work to better understand what utilities are underground and above ground along both sides of Route 158. But first, let me share with you why we are researching this information. Dominion Energy brings electric transmission service into the Outer Banks across Albemarle Sound. We have 2 circuits that run parallel to the Wright Memorial Bridge. Those 2 transmission lines come into Kitty Hawk Substation, and then 2 transmission lines come out of Kitty Hawk Substation. From Kitty Hawk Substation, the transmission line travels down 158 to the Collington Tap, about 7 miles. From Collington Tap to Nags Head Substation, that's a distance of about 4.5 miles. The line continues from Nags Head Substation 9 miles down Highway 12 to Oregon Inlet Delivery Point.
Before we go any further?
Yes.
Is there connectivity across the small bridge between Roanoke Island and Nags Head. Your previous slide, the map, showed the breakdown to Collington Tap to Nags Head to Oregon Inlet Bridge. Is there any power distribution coming from the mainland across the small bridge into Nags Head?
I believe that's the distribution part of our grid, and we at Dominion Energy separate the transmission from the distribution. So there would be distribution level
So I'm
electrical
asking a
service.
trick question, aren't I?
Yeah, I think the answer is yes. The answer is yes.
Yes, it's a trick question, or yes, there's power?
Yes, sir. Yes, there's power.
The reason I'm asking is I live in Nags Head, and we had a storm a while back where all of the poles, wooden poles, on that causeway to Roanoke Island were broken like matchsticks.
Yes, sir.
And we were out of power for 3 or 4 days. And I'm looking at the map of transmission power coming from the north, from the Wright Memorial Bridge, and I was puzzled why there would be a prolonged power outage in Nags Head if the main transmission from the north was not affected. And again, if I'm putting you on the spot, please continue. I just thought it might be a top-of-mind type question.
So when there's a large outage like that, and you have a lot of broken poles,
Yes.
in many cases, our distribution colleagues can do some switching. They can switch some parts of the distribution grid on, switch some parts of it off, and redistribute the power.
I see.
And in some cases, and you all have been here for large outage events, it will take several days or a week or even several weeks to repair those poles and cross arms and spans of wire. It's the transmission wires, what we're here to talk about tonight, bring in bulk electric power, and then they bring it into a substation like Kitty Hawk or Kill Devil Hills or Nags Head. They step it down
Right.
to the distribution level, and then it's distributed out on a larger level grid.
Okay, thank
So
you.
I apologize. We do everything we can to get the lights back on when they're out.
No, I absolutely know that.
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, you guys have been great. It's not a complaint at all. It's just a curiosity question.
sir.
Please
Thank you.
continue.
Thank you very much. So the section of our transmission line, I'm going to go back one slide if we can. The section of our transmission system from Kitty Hawk Substation to Collington Tap is what we call networked. I'm going to maybe go forward one slide here. They're a little bit out of order. Maybe one more slide. Okay, there we go. Let's go back here. I want to make sure. There we go. So the section of our transmission system from Kitty Hawk to Collington Tap is what we call networked. The transmission system here is sort of in the shape of a rectangle, which provides alternatives in the event of an outage. The section of our transmission system from the Collington Tap to Nags Head Substation to Oregon Inlet delivery point is what we call a radial line, meaning that there is no alternative feed in the event of an outage there. This afternoon, I want to ask you to focus on that section of that 4.5 mile line from Collington Tap to Nags Head Substation. And from our evaluation of this section of our line, and I work with a lot of smart engineers in the electric transmission planning group, we believe that in 2024, there will be a greater need to electrify. My group, the Transmission Planning and Communications team, evaluates these transmission lines on an annual basis for NERC, the North American Reliability Corporation. Dominion Energy is also a member of PJM. PJM is a regional transmission organization that coordinates the movement of electricity in all or parts of 13 states and the District of Columbia, including Virginia and North Carolina. PJM also has reliability standards, and we analyze our system to meet those standards, as well as using our own planning criteria. We look 5, 10, and 15 years out And we do that because it can take 3, 4, or even 5 years or more to build a transmission line from feasibility and planning to construction. So why is there interest from the planning group for 2024? And the answer, in part, I think you heard from your tax folks today as well, but the answer is growth. From 2010 to 2019, the number of permanent Dare County residents increased 9%, from 33,900 to 37,000. In 2010, Dare County had 14,335 housing units. That number has increased to more than 35,000 in 2019, a 144% increase. In Nags Head, the population in 2010 was 2,757 residents, 2,940 residents today, a 6% increase. You all see that increase in growth from the perspective of traffic, tax revenue, new business, more out-of-state license plates. At Dominion Energy, we see that growth in megawatts. Our analysts' analysis is that electricity usage, again, from Collington Tap all the way down to Oregon Inlet, will increase 30% over the next decade. The estimated growth in megawatts by 2024 indicates a second transmission line may be necessary to reduce the risk that you would face if there was an outage. The best way to mitigate that risk from a radial line is to construct a second transmission line, so that in the event that you lose one line during a storm, Dominion would have the ability to switch customers to that second circuit. You see that here, again, as we sort of discussed, more frequently with the distribution system, the utility poles in your neighborhood. A common occurrence is when a car would knock out a utility pole and cause an outage. Our employees on the distribution side of our business are able to open some switches, close some switches, and bring the lights back on in a different configuration of the grid more quickly for most of the customers. The person who lives closest to the broken pole probably is out the longest. With a second transmission line, we'd be able to do the same thing just for a larger number of customers. So we are here today to ask for your patience as we study the feasibility for a second electric transmission line and evaluate the overhead and underground utilities along both sides of the bypass, Route 158. This will help us continue to evaluate the need for a second circuit and the potential routes. We're surveying underground utilities, one, because we're not able to use the existing concrete transmission monopoles along the east side of 158 for a second transmission line. The poles simply weren't engineered to accommodate 2 electric transmission circuits. In addition, we don't have an easement to add a crossarm on the east side of those poles for a second circuit. There's still a lot we don't know and a lot of information we hope to gather during the feasibility phase. We have not selected a preferred route. We will evaluate both overhead and underground options. We expect results from the feasibility study by April or May of next year, and we are committed to keeping you all informed and updating you on this process. I appreciate your time and letting us come and speak to you. And there's a lot we don't know, but if you have a question and I have the answer, I'm happy to provide it tonight.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Yes,
Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
So, sir, you're talking about putting some lines underground.
Yes, sir.
What's the option, possibility of having some of the existing lines that are above ground now? If you're going to dig a hole, putting a line down there, can't you put some of those lines down there at the same time?
We're gonna look at that. One of the challenges is the existing utilities that are underground already, and making sure we have the proper clearance to put a transmission line underground. It's still quite an engineering feat to put high voltage power lines, electric transmission lines underground. We do it commonly with the distribution circuits. It's still quite a big deal to put transmission circuits underground.
Okay. And I was on another board prior to being on this board, and at the time, when they put the gigantic concrete poles along Bay Drive, of course, along through Nags Head.
Yeah.
What they told us then was what they were gonna do is having the concrete poles would eliminate the smaller poles that were there, the wooden poles, but the wooden poles are still there. Why would that, I don't understand that. You had these gigantic concrete poles.
Yes.
And the wooden poles that they were replacing, but now the wooden poles are still there.
Yeah, are there wires still on the wooden poles?
Yeah,
It's possible, and I don't know the answer, but it's possible that the wires on those poles are communication wires. They may belong to Verizon or Comcast, or they may be telephone wires. They may not be electric wires. In some cases, across our service territory in Virginia, North Carolina, where we're actively putting distribution circuits underground, in some cases, we see that the other utilities, the common utilities like Verizon and Comcast, don't want to pay for undergrounding their communication wires, and so we have to leave the poles up, even though our wires have come off those poles.
right. And Bob, is this the same gentleman that you had a conversation with about along the causeway?
That's Winnie.
It's Winnie.
Winnie.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're right now, they're looking, they gotta do 2 lines there, Winnie, and correct me if we're wrong. One of those lines will be underground, the other lines will be above ground, and they will be steel poles, on the causeway. Did I get that right, Winnie? And the reason they've gotta go 1 line underground and 1 line above ground is, again, correct me if I'm wrong, they don't have the capacity to put 2 lines underground with the size of the line that they have going down the causeway. They can't get 2 lines in there. It's too small, too small to get 2 lines in there. Did I answer that right, Vice Chairman? And there, I think you had, she had like 2 or 3 easements that they still had to get issued. You may have approved upon that since we last met, but there's a couple outstanding easements that they're trying to wrap up so they can move forward with that.
Sir, you indicated that you don't have any easements yet and that sort of thing. And one of the questions that came up since you're running this along the road is, and I'm sure you do this, but I just had to ask a question. Do you engage with NCDOT on this? I mean, when they get ready to do something to a road, they just do it. Yeah, and it seemed like it might be a good time to lay a line, you know. So I'm just curious about that.
We do. The folks who handle the contractors who are doing our feasibility studies have talked to the North Carolina Department of Transportation to find out what information they have about what is along their roadway. And so yes, and the feasibility studies that we're doing right now are both sides of 158, and we're looking at all the utilities that are underground and above ground.
When you're doing something like this, it's obviously going to be beneficial to everyone along that route. Do you historically have issues getting easements?
Yeah, I would say we.
What I'm asking is how difficult is it to ultimately get what you need?
I think for that 4.5 mile section from Collington Tap to the Nags Head substation, it'd be pretty difficult to get easements from all those property owners.
A lot of eminent domain.
Possible, you don't know until you sit down and talk to folks, but it's. I think it would be difficult.
Let me ask you, that's a pretty dramatic impact when we talk about burying that amount. How would who's going to pay for this? How's that cost? Is it going to be spread across? Can you give us some insight?
The cost would go into would be spread out over our 2.5 million customers in Virginia, North Carolina. Yeah, so if you're a Dominion customer, you get a bill every month, and if you look at it, it has some itemized numbers on it, and one includes for transmission, and that transmission portion of the bill goes up and down about every 6 to 12 months based on the projects that we're building at the time. And it's, we have oversight from North Carolina Utility Commission and the State Corporation Commission in Virginia. And so that the cost would be spread over our rate base.
So this is going to sound naive, but if we were to do things underwater, is that real? I know when we run power from Hatteras over to Ocracoke, is that something that's in the mix or just no?
It is.
Okay.
It is in the mix. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yep. And again, the point of our meeting and our desire to speak to you all is simply to let you know that we're going to look at all available options. And if the sound option is a viable one, we will certainly be happy to report back to you in April or May of next year and let you know what we found.
That was a good presentation. Thank you.
They're going to do study east-west 158 underground. By the way, Commissioner Bateman, underground runs 4 to 5 times the cost of overhead to do underground. I believe I'm getting that right, 4 to 5 times. The sound side, and actually it's been talked about down the center of 158 as well, but I find that one's going to be extremely difficult. But that's a viable option. So they've got a lot to do between now and May to come up with what they think is the best plan.
I have.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I just have one thing, and it's not really for the transmission group, but it is for the distribution group.
Yes,
They get big kudos because you guys had a fire at the substation the other day. And it was remarkable at how fast we got our electricity back in Mans Harbor. And good job to those boys.
Yeah, it's
Really,
like
really,
2.5
really
hours,
good
I
job.
think.
Yeah, 2.5
I was on
hours was
9:20.
on.
Yeah.
My stuff didn't thaw out or nothing.
It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Ross just lives in the wrong neighborhood.
Yeah.
Hey, I live in Hatteras. I feel your
No,
pain.
I will echo that appreciation because I was in Chesapeake that day coming home, and I got a text from my wife saying, "There's no power." And the substation is about half a mile from my house, so we were pretty aware that we had a problem there. But again, came back in just a couple of hours, and
Yeah, it
you
was
guys
awesome.
did great, so. Hi, Winnie, I didn't see you back here with the mask. I would have directed my earlier question to you because we spoke about this some time back on those causeway transmission poles.
Yeah.
2020, what
Anyone
a
else?
year.
Well, Robert, thank you so much. Appreciate the update, and we
Thank
look
you.
forward to hearing back you.
Hope to be back in front of you here next year.
Okay.
Thank you
great.
so much.
Y'all be safe. County Manager?
Yeah, item 7 on the agenda is a virtual 2020 census update, and Derek DeRazio will be on the screen to make that presentation.
Thank you, and good evening, gentlemen. I'm not available by video, I'm calling in, but I will share my screen to show my presentation, so give me a second to do that. Okay, great. Can you see my screen with the presentation?
Yep.
All right, great. Well, again, thank you for having me this evening. My name is Derek DeRazio. I work for the U.S. Census Bureau. I'm not a resident of Dare County. I'm a North Carolina resident, but I'm a Coast Guard veteran. So I was stationed in Elizabeth City and have done work at all the Coast Guard small boat stations from Oak Island all the way up through the Outer Banks. So I'm very familiar with the area. I am the regional representative for the 2020 census. So I cover all 10 counties of the Albemarle region. including Dare, Currituck, Hyde, and all the surrounding counties, and all the municipalities therein. So I've been working with all the folks in the region for well over the past year, promoting the currently ongoing 2020 census, which of course this happens every decade. It's the annual census, and it is fast coming to a close. So I'll give you here one final briefing for you before we close this thing out on September 30th. So if you take a look at the slide, these are just my talking points we're going to go over. And this data on the slide was collected on August 7th. So there's some updated numbers now I'll give you verbally. But the 2020 census reported response rate for Dare County as of August 7th was 34.6%. Based on the latest numbers today, I just looked at our response rate website. It's being reported as 34.9%. So we're up 0.3 percentage points in the last week. So we made some improvement there. So currently it's 34.9% reported response rate. When you look at the data, at least the way it's reported, Dare is the 96th lowest ranked county out of 100 counties across the state for the reported response rate. But we'll get to that in a minute. That's a key word, reported response rate. But in 2010, your final response rate for Dare County was 45.6%. So we're roughly, 10 percentage points or so off the pace from 2010. Of course, in 2010 they didn't have COVID-19 to deal with. But in 2010 we also did not have the internet response. It was all paid for. You could call in. So it's more convenient this year. So do those factors weigh out? I don't know. But we're about 10 percentage points off the pace of 2010. When I say the reported response rate, the focus for the census is and always has been on counting year-round residents. The rule for the census is you are counted where you live, quote, most of the year, where you're living most of the year as of April 1st, 2020, which is our reference date now. So obviously, if you have folks that, that live in Virginia, 8 months of the year, 9 months of the year, and they come and spend the summer with us in Dare County, we're not counting those folks for Dare County. Those folks get counted in Virginia, where they live most of the year. So what we really need to focus on is the year-round residents. Unfortunately, when they report the response rates on the website, they do not adjust for seasonal housing, vacation homes, or even we call them vacant homes in general. We don't adjust for vacant homes. So if somebody, if there's a vacant house or seasonal rental or vacation home, just gets counted as a non-response essentially until we complete the census. So that unfortunately makes the response rates look really low for our coastal communities, such as Dare County, but also for our western counties as well, out in the mountains, with all the vacation homes out there. Typically the coastal communities and the western communities are the lowest reported response rates just because of the way that they report the figures. They will eventually adjust for those vacant homes, but they won't do that until after the census is complete. And we actually have boots on the ground that verify each house is either occupied year-round or it's not. Once we physically do that, then they'll make those adjustments for vacant homes. So right now, we can make some estimated adjustments to the numbers, and the Dare County Complete Count Committee has made those calculations as well. I'll show you their website here as well, where they've calculated what we call the actual estimated response rate. In other words, once we take out and remove those year-round, those vacant homes, from year-round homes, what do we think the percentage of year-round residents that we've counted so far? So we currently estimate that approximately anywhere between 78 to 80% of the year-round residents across Dare County have been counted or have responded to the census, which is pretty good. Much better than 34.9%.
I'm confused.
On the website.
I mean, he's breaking up. I'm sorry, guys. I'm
Derek,
having a terrible time
you're
trying to
breaking
follow.
up, and it's
I
hard.
know, it never
We got
works.
a
This
bad
stuff
connection.
never works.
But that first
Okay.
bullet point, you're gonna have to explain that. I'm slow here, but you say the census reported for 2020 is 34.6%. Why is it so low when you say 78 to 79% of the residents have responded? I don't understand that. You got to educate me. on that?
Absolutely, and then you're not learning the confusion. Can you hear me a little better now?
No.
No.
No? Okay. Huh.
Is it on our end, Matt? It's not? Okay. Are you on, are you on speaker?
Yeah, I was. I'm on my cell phone. I can hear y'all great. But I guess you can't
That
hear
ain't
me.
the problem.
Yeah, that ain't the issue.
Yeah, but that's not, yeah, the problem is us hearing you. So are you on speaker or are you on?
Yeah, I was. I took it off speaker, so I'm talking directly on the phone now. Can you hear me any better?
Still fuzzy.
Let him finish.
I guess we're gonna have to deal with it, but go ahead, mate. Can you address that? I'm confused.
Yes.
That first bullet's confusing me.
Yes, let me address that if you can follow me. So in Dare County, we have a lot of vacation homes and seasonal rentals. Based on estimated data that we have from the census, we have about 15 to 16,000 occupied homes, from year-round residents, and we have about 19,000 we call vacant homes, which includes the seasonal rentals, folks that don't live there year-round. When they report the results on the website, they don't subtract out those vacant homes from the denominator of the calculation. So if you have a vacation or seasonal home on the website, they just report it as a non-response. But in reality, we're only supposed to count the people that live there year-round. Okay, so we can make our own calculations based on the estimates of the occupied plus the seasonal homes. And if we do that and adjust the denominator of the calculation accordingly, that's why there's such a disparity. Because y'all have so many, we call it vacant, but seasonal, vacation rental homes. So once you take those out of the equation, what we're saying is we think that roughly between 78 to 80% of those 15 to 16,000 occupied homes have responded. Did you hear that at all?
Yeah, hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
The short answer is, the 99% number up there assumes that every house in Dare County is occupied by a year-round resident that would report on the census. When you pull out the second homes from that and just use the true primary residents, then our number goes up to that 75% number, because you backed out those empty houses that aren't supposed to be counted anyway.
Well, wait a minute. The bullet says focus is counting year-round residents. The bullet also says currently estimated 79% year-round residents have responded. That's what I'm having difficulty understanding, that why is our numbers 34.6%?
Well, let me try, Bobby. He said we've got about 11,000 units that are year-round.
Right.
And another roughly 15,000 units that are rentals. If you take 79% response of the 11,000, you'll get a roughly 8,800 units response. Divided by 11,000 plus 15,000, which is the total of both types units, it comes out to 34.6%.
All right, thank you for explaining that. I wouldn't
Yeah, it
get.
wasn't clear at all, Bob. I went through this a couple of times. I agree with you.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation, gentlemen. Yeah, essentially what you're doing is to get the estimated actual response rate, you're going to divide the reported response rate on the website, which is actually now 34.9%. You're going to divide that by your occupancy rate, okay, which we estimate to be roughly 45%. So if we divide the reported response rate by your occupancy rate, that gives us what we think to be the percentage of year-round residents who are responding, hence the discrepancy. So it's reported 34.9, depending on what you think your occupancy rate is of your year-round residents, your actual response rate is going to be anywhere between 70 to 80%.
Yeah, if I may, to reach the 2010 census rate of 45.6%, Bob, we will need to get between 98 and 99% response from all 11,000 full-year resident units. Otherwise, we will not get there. So my next comment was, Derek, I presume we will not get there, 45%.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think we'll get there. And just to be clear, based on our data, again, this is just based on previous census data. It's an estimate. We think there are about over 15,000 occupied households and over 19,000 vacant households to seasonal rentals. Which is why your occupancy rate is less than 50%, because there's more vacation homes than year-round homes. So it's 15,000 and 19,000. 15,000 occupied, 19,000 vacant. But you're absolutely right. In order to reach that, we have to reach a much higher percentage of your residential population, which probably isn't going to happen right now. But I'm going to talk about some things where we're going to definitely increase the rates.
Do we,
moving forward.
Derek, do we have data on the history of percentage of responses other than just 2019?
Yeah, so we have the 2010 response rate of 45.6%, okay, which is on the slide.
Excuse me, 2010.
Yeah, that was 2010. And
Do we
the
have
current response
2000
rate.
numbers?
We do. I can look it up for you. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find that for
I
you.
mean, how do we fare comparing 10 years, 10 years, 10 years?
Yeah, but let me look up 2000 for you real quick. I'm pulling it up right now on my other computer. So in 2000, it looks like y'all were about 37%. So you were worse in 2000.
Wow.
Again, and you're not alone in having the low reported response rates. Other coastal communities have the same experience, as well as the western counties, that have a lot of vacation homes out west. That's just the way the data is reported. But again, who we want to count are the folks that live there most of the year. That's who we're trying to count. Any more questions on that before we move to the next bullet point? That's probably the most confusing.
Yeah, thank you, Derek.
Okay. So what have we done as a county to promote the 2020 census? You may recall back in September 3rd, 2019, we passed a resolution forming the Complete Count Committee, the CCC, to promote the census across Dare County. That included Dare and all the municipalities, the towns that they're in. And the CCC for Dare County, happy to tell you, has been outstanding. Probably among the finest that I've seen in the entire region of the 10 counties I work with. Dorothy, Beth, Donna, all those folks are doing a heck of a job with it. All the municipalities, they've been working really hard as well to try to bring up those response rates. So I want to give kudos to the Complete Count Committee for everything y'all have done. And again, if you look at your website, you can just see some of the fine work that you've done on your website. That's one of the best websites we have of any Complete Count Committee, any county that I've seen in the entire region. So I want to thank you all for that. So that's what we've done so far. Any questions about that before I move on? Okay, great. So the next bullet point is what we call non-response follow-up, or NARFU. Some people say NERFU. I call it NARFU. So this is where we go around knocking on doors for the folks who have not yet self-responded to the census. So those, what we actually do is we go and verify the status of each household. So if we've got, 15,000 households in Dare County, we go and knock on all those doors first to verify whether that is truly an occupied household or not occupied year-round. And then if it's occupied year-round, we count those residents who have not already responded. So these are actual boots-on-the-ground operation, and that started, essentially it started in earnest last week, the week of 8/10. Now I can't say for sure in each community, if information is optimized daily, and we don't have a good schedule out, but anytime between last week and the end of the census on September 30th, in all of your communities across Dare County, you could see census workers knocking on doors. And I want to just take a minute here to point out that, of course, we are following all guidelines. We will be masked. We will knock on the door, step back 6 feet, maintain our social distancing. Yeah. We have proper hand hygiene with sanitizers and gloves.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Okay. So all those health and safety requirements are met. Can you all still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right. So we have started the NARFU operation. Now, folks can still self-respond to the census up until the end of the census on September 30th, 2020. Okay, it was supposed to be October 31st, 2020, but if you follow the recent, political activities, the end date got pushed up a month. It's caused a lot of consternation across the country with folks saying it's hard to get an accurate count, shortchanged us by a month. But I assure you, we're doing everything we possibly can to count every single person.
Why?
In Dare County and across the state.
Why?
Meeting that deadline. Yep, you got a question?
Why did we move it from October 31st? Why was it moved?
Yeah. Well, that's, if I can answer that question, I would. It's a lot of political wrangling has went on. What they're saying is that we have to deliver these final counts to the president by December 31st of 2020 in order to make deadlines to provide the data to the states for apportionment for congressional purposes, but also for redistricting, for drawing the voting lines. And if we don't get the data to all the states by December 30, by the right deadline, then it will impact or delay possibly state elections, and we'll not have good voting precinct lines shown for the state elections. But it's a congressional thing essentially. And well, we thought we would get an extension and last longer. They have pushed it back now to September 30th. So I really, I tend not to focus on the politics. I just do follow my marching orders.
So where did this direction come from?
It came from the president. From the president, we had made a request as an agency,
Right.
to get an extension, and it was denied.
Okay.
We were trying to get the end date of the census extended. So
Yeah.
so that's where we're at. So there's nothing we can do about it. It's got pushed back. It get pushed up a month. So what's that mean? We got a lot of work ahead of us. What we are doing though, and this is a new announcement that was just made. I'll try to show you on the screen here, if I can. We've adapted our operations to ensure everyone is counted, and this just came out on Friday. But what we're doing to try to make this work, this whole announcement out in its entirety, instead of knocking on every door, we're going to start calling some folks by phone. Okay, that'll help us, make operations easier. And we do have some good phone numbers for a lot of the addresses, on our address list, both landlines and cell phones. We have phone numbers from our database. We also have access to other commercial databases to get these phone numbers. So where we can, we're going to start making some calls instead of knocking on doors. When we go to knock on the door, if you're not there, okay, you don't respond. A lot of people have these doorbells these days where they can see the door. They don't want to come, they're not going to come because they can see it when you knock on the door. But if you don't respond when we knock on your door, we leave a notice of visit, which is basically a little postcard saying, hey, we were here. Please self-respond to the census. Here's the website. Here's the phone number to call if you don't have access to a computer. Please complete it. Take your 5 minutes to complete it, and we won't have to come back. But we leave those on people's doors every time we visit, and hopefully some folks will respond, preventing a future visit. We have also decided that we will mail out additional paper questionnaires to some non-responding households. So we've already had 6 mailings to most households, reminding people to complete the census. We will make a 7th mailing to households in low responding tracts to include up to an additional paper questionnaire to help those folks respond. We also will be reaching out, emailing households in low responding areas. We've obtained email addresses for more than 20 million households across the country in the lowest responding tracts. So census tracts that have lower than 50% response rate, those households will be getting specific and individual email reminders as well to help those folks respond. We've got a series of things that we are doing to try to increase the response rate and reduce our workload. The way it works when we knock on your door, in general, and we're trying to replace some of this with phone calls, but in general, they'll come to your door 6 separate visits. So if you don't respond, they'll come back another day, until there's 6 visits in general. However, after 3 unsuccessful visits, we can do census by proxy, where we go and ask a neighbor, a landlord, whoever might know you, to try to get the information about the folks that live in that household. That's called census by proxy after 3 visits. And we also will refer to administrative records. So if we have administrative records data, for example, IRS tax records, Medicaid, Medicare records, Social Security records, valid administrative data, we only have, in those cases, we only have to visit one time for the household. So we'll limit the number of visits we have to make if we have sufficient administrative records. So these are all, that's the way it works in terms of the visits for non-response follow-up. So we're doing all of that to try to capture every single person who is not responsive to census in Dare County. Any questions about NARFU?
I got a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Question number one, I myself, I filled out the census on the very first week, did it online. I'm still getting mail asking me to respond. Is there any way that you have stopped mailing or just going to continue to mail individuals who have already filled it out?
Short answer is that they're trying to stop those additional mailings. Just number one, to stop bothering folks, but number two, to save the money. But it has not been successful.
I have no
so
idea.
I apologize.
We can't understand the answer at all.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Hope you can hear me better here. We have tried to stop those mailings to folks who have self-responded, but we have not been successful in all cases. So we certainly apologize if you're getting repeated mailings. You do not need to complete anything additional if you've already responded.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'm looking at, it's kind of aggravating when you still keep getting it in the mail, but also looking at it as a taxpayer, I'm actually paying for that stuff being mailed to me that I've already filled out. And I think that's kind of a wasteful part on the government's part.
You're absolutely right. It does increase the cost as well. And again, we're trying to correct that. But again, it's not been successful in all cases.
Right. And my second question is, when you do start sending people out door to door, and you were talking about making 6 different visits, if you obviously walk up to an oceanfront house here in Dare County, and it's got a big sign on it that says, "My Vacation, Unit Number Oceanfront 503," would your census then understand that it's a vacation home and not make the other 5 visits?
Yes, they were making that adjustment. So to verify vacant status, we call it vacant, but to verify vacant status only requires 1 visit if it's clear and obvious. Used to be they would do all 6 visits, but now for this year they're going to do 1 visit. That will help eliminate the number of visits as well and save resources. Yeah, to verify vacant status, it's only 1 visit required.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, great question. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I was asking the board if they had any other questions there.
Okay.
Last one. Do we know what the expected response rate is for the state of North Carolina, Derek?
Well, the only data I have on that is we're hoping it to be 60%. That's what we're hoping it to be. The governor's goal was 80% when this whole thing started. That was the governor's goal across the state. We're not going to reach that, obviously, but we're hoping to at least reach 60%. I think for the state right now, we're at 59.7%.
Think about that.
So, we think we can easily 60, but originally it was 80%.
Just over half, and extrapolating the rest. Right.
Yep. But again, this is self-response, so that does not include us going door to door and getting those responses ourselves. That's how many people self-responded. Just moving on to the next bullet point here. There's an estimated economic impact that the Governor's Commission, the Make Ends Count Committee, has put on their website. And for Dare County, they estimate the census economic impact is about $67 million a year, annually. And if you look at the website, they say there's over $910,000 potentially at risk due to non-response. This was as of the end of May. And, obviously increased self-response will mitigate this risk. But I want to clarify this point for y'all just to make sure we understand it. Basically, what they're saying is each person in the state of North Carolina that we count in the census, okay, that lives, year-round or most of the year in a particular community, is worth about $2,000 in government funding per year, each year for the next 10 years. So each, not to be crass, but to put a number on you, you're worth about $20,000 in government funding over the next decade for each person that we count or that we miss. So what they're doing here is just trying to add up all the folks that, you know, that might be missed based on the response rates as of that date. Then if we do that, you know, we'll come out to this $910,000, you know, figure for Dare County. And they got different numbers for each county. You know, Wake County is up in the millions. But what they're trying to say here is, hey, let's just increase self-response so we can mitigate the possible risk of loss of funding. Now, most of that funding is federal funding that's based on census data. So, you know, things like Medicaid, Medicare, funding for roads, schools, a lot of your food security programs, a lot of your funding for social services, they're funded on a per capita basis. And that per capita basis comes from the official, you know, census estimates of the population. There's also a state component to that funding. So there's, you know, percentages of sales and use tax, hotel tax, occupancy tax. That's distributed based on a per capita basis. That also will be tied to census numbers as well. That's where they get this economic impact figure from. However, like I said, we are trying to go ahead and manually, physically count each person who has not already responded to the census in Dare County. We're trying to capture those folks in NARFU, that we don't lose any money. But, you know, we are still trying to get folks to self-respond because that is the most accurate way to count folks, the most cost-effective way to count folks. And there's generally a statistical correlation between areas that have high self-response rates and the accuracy of the final count of the census. So we're trying to go ahead and get folks to self-respond as much as possible. So that is that bullet point. Any questions about the funding aspects of this?
Excuse me, go ahead.
Are you counting illegal residents?
Yeah, well, yeah. So the rule is anybody that lives in this country as of April 1st, 2020 is the reference date. Okay, that's the official census reference date. But if you're here as of April 1st, regardless of your status, you are counted.
Okay.
Doesn't matter if you're here legally, illegally. Doesn't matter if you're a criminal, newborn baby, oldest person in the world. Everybody gets counted who's here April 1st.
Derek, is there any kind of forgiveness factor here? It's obvious if 2010 we had a 45% response rate, our population has certainly not decreased in 10 years. If anything, it's obviously increased. So I'm wondering if there's a forgiveness factor with respects to the percentages, or is that wishful thinking on my part?
It's wishful thinking, I think.
Well, the percentages are all relative to numbers of population, so it's all relative. But there is a certain margin of error, of course, associated with any data. But again, you know, I think, you know, your reported response rate in 2010 again was what it was, 45.6%. But we counted all those other folks during NARFA, so I don't think you were underfunded for the last decade. I think we caught everybody, and I hope the same thing will happen this year, you know, for the next decade. But what I will say is, to answer your question more directly, there is a program that's called the Count Question Resolution Program, CQR, and every census, you know, every 10 years after the census, they'll publish something in the Federal Register. It comes out about 6 months after the census. So probably around, if we turn the final counts to the president in December 31st, you can look around June of 2021 in the Federal Register to see the CQR program. That is the one opportunity that all jurisdictions have to request a review of their official census counts. And if you look back in 2010, Dare County did not have any challenges, but about 10 counties across the state of North Carolina did challenge their numbers, and some got their numbers increased as part of that CQR process. Durham County in particular, you know, increased by a few thousand folks after they did that CQR process. So there is a way that if you don't agree with the final numbers, that you can request a review of them, you know, through the CQR process. That would be the last chance you'd have to get things corrected. You know, for this census.
Who would request that? Do we have the authority as a board to request that for DARE?
Yeah, you do. It's the highest elected official or their designated representative for each, each political jurisdiction. So the state could do it, the county could do it, the municipalities can do it as well. And typically the way you see it is, I don't want to make it mean spirited, but it usually involves like one county might gain folks, but a neighboring county might lose them, or one state might gain folks, a neighboring state might lose them. So it's kind of a doggy world out there, in terms of, usually the folks that gain, somebody else loses, in another jurisdiction. But it's a very detailed process, and I will certainly send all that information to the Complete Count Committee. All the Complete Count Committee said they'll have it. I won't be with you at that time in June, but they'll have all the information to proceed forward and do the CCAR program if they so choose.
Thank you.
Yep. So last bullet point, the remaining strategies to promote a complete count for Dare County. So our message now, and this is where y'all can come in handy for us, just speak to your constituents, speak to your people, your family, your friends, and encourage residents to self-respond before a census worker knocks on your door so you can avoid the knock. And then also, the second half of this is if they do knock on your door, please cooperate. We're going to be as quick and brief as possible. We're going to maintain all appropriate protocols. But, if you just see us knock on your door, come answer it, take the 5-10 minutes with us to get it done. We'll have to come back 5 more times, keep bothering you. So we're asking folks that, self-respond, number one, go online, make a phone call, avoid the knock. If we do knock on your door, please cooperate. When we analyze the data more specifically for Dare County, your lower self-response rates for year-round residents is your mainland Dare. And the numbers here on the slide are a little outdated. Right now, mainland Dare is about 53% for the year-round residents that have responded, and Manteo is up to about 63% instead of 62 for the year-round residents that have responded. So if you're going to focus your efforts, I would say, to promote the census, you're going to want to pinpoint mainland Dare and Manteo. I think that's where most of the year-round residents that haven't responded yet live. And if you can focus on those 2 areas, your numbers are going to go up for the whole county. So as you promote, I'd focus on those 2 areas would be my recommendation for you. And that concludes my presentation. I'm sorry it went long and that you couldn't hear me. Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Derek. Is anybody else have any questions of Derek?
Yeah.
No. Right. Well, thank you, Derek. This is very enlightening information for us to have. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
All right. Before we move into the next item, Bobby, Dorothy, I know y'all been working hard and getting the message out. Is there anything we can do to put the pressure on the message in mainland and Dare and Manteo since these numbers are so low?
We absolutely can, Chairman Woodard, but I think the presentation might have been a little confusing for folks.
Yes, Dorothy.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I'm going to try to explain.
Not good.
So he was talking about I think a 34% response
Right.
rate. If you go to the county's census page, which is darenc.com/census, we actually, Beth is updating that every week because the 34% is very misleading because in that 34% are all of those homes that they already know are vacant.
Right.
Or occupied by vacationers and not year-round people. So the governor's, he wants an 82% response rate. If you look at, when you do the calculations and see where we really are with our response rate, we're at 79 or 80%. Now, some of those areas are low, and we do need to look at the mainland and Manteo. You look at Duck, because we have them broken down by the way that the census, their tracks, I think they call them. Duck is at 119% response rate right now. because
How
they
can you be
estimate.
119%?
Because they estimated fewer, there's give and take.
Okay.
But
Make sure when he sends us the information about appealing it, make sure we have that.
But we're really
We
not
may have to be
doing
there.
nearly as poorly as that 34% reflects. I mean, we
would
certainly
agree.
could
I
do
agree with
better.
There's a huge Hispanic population on Roanoke Island and the mainland,
Right.
and they're very skeptical.
Oh, yeah, absolutely
Very,
they are.
very, very skeptical about answering anything. Is there anything that we're doing to try to address that, or do we have Hispanic speaking people going door to door to those places?
I
or-
don't think there are any.
I don't think so either.
We worked, what we were doing before COVID came about was we had reached out, there's a group that's very, very active. A lot of them are retired school teachers that go in and tutor the Spanish-speaking kids, and they actually go into the homes every week, and they're considered trusted sources, because that's the big hurdle, is finding a trusted source. That particular family would want to believe or might believe. So we had reached out, and the tutors, we had printed cards that the tutors were taking in with them. I actually went to a meeting of those tutors with the Children and Youth Partnership and gave out the cards so that they could give those. I think they're probably not tutoring anymore, or I'm not sure that the cards even got distributed with the way that this has changed. We do have, y'all have probably seen the interpreter who works for Health and Human Services that is translating the videos, the weekly video updates about COVID, and she has offered to help. And we have another representative from that's a Spanish-speaking person on our complete count committee, but we probably need to do more. And we'll work on that. It's made it pretty tough. We were going to do the parade, and we had a whole plan of action, and everything just kind of, but I just, what I really want to emphasize is we're not doing as poorly as that 34% would lead you to believe, and I know Commissioner Ross and I had this conversation.
Yeah, we sure did. To get back to that 45% that you saw, we would literally need 99% plus full-year resident response. Without that, we will be under 45. But we should be more than 35, I would hope. My guess from listening to him, we may get to 40, maybe.
But those are self-response rates, so that doesn't include the people that they count when they go door to door.
Then why did we have that statistic?
That's what they're going off of right now.
Okay.
So that's just, those are the people that respond voluntarily.
For our comfort level, I have a county manager that's a friend of mine in the middle part of the state that sent me an email a few weeks ago bragging about his response rate, and he showed that 99th ranking for Dare County, and he said, y'all are really working hard, something smart in Dare County. And I thought, what in the world? So I went online to the Census Bureau to look at what he was talking about, and the numbers that they show there are right, but when you bear down in the detail at the Census Bureau, it says in there that this number does not take into account non-occupied dwellings, and that the rate in resort and coastal communities is actually higher than shown. So they recognize that that percentage is meaningless. When you go back and bore down and do the calculation, you're at the 80%. When you take our 80% of our residents that live here full-time and compare it with my smart aleck friend, we were way ahead of him. And so we compare well, very well statewide.
Yeah, 60% is what they're hoping. We're already 20 points higher.
Exactly. And so Dorothy and when the folks from Charlotte and Washington, D.C. came to meet with me way back in January, or further back than that, wasn't it?
It was about then.
In the fall, talking about creating this committee, and I didn't know what to think about it, never heard of it and all that. And I asked Dorothy and Donna about it, and they sort of volunteered and jumped in with 2 feet and have done a tremendous job. I mean, they far exceeded
That's a good
their
point.
expectations, and you can see by those numbers of our people that they're really well. So I'm not worried that Dare isn't gonna get its share, because we're doing as well or better than we ever have with getting those out. It's just the way they report their statistics that don't make any sense, that create the confusion that we obviously had tonight, and rightfully so. If you don't go in and bore down into the details to figure out what they're talking about, it doesn't make sense, so.
Gotcha. Thank you, Bobby. Well, you know, if our numbers are better and we feel more comfortable about them, that's one thing, but sounds like their numbers is what counts. So, we gotta do something to try to get those numbers up. Anyway, if that's a possibility, Dorothy, to try to work on that. And help, as Jim said, with that Hispanic side. I guess that brings us to item 8, Bobby.
Yes, sir. Item 8 is a grant project ordinance for the Coronavirus Relief Fund CARES Act for the elections grant. We got, hang on, Dave, I might not need you, but we got $76,351 to go towards the election costs for COVID and from the CARES Act and the Help America Vote Act that we need to budget into our budget. There's a budget ordinance in your package that puts that money in the ordinance for the Board of Elections to use as we go forward. I'm not sure if you have any questions. That's fairly self-explanatory, but if you do, then Dave can answer those questions for you.
Anybody got any questions of Dave? That's information only. You don't need a motion.
I need you to approve that budget
Okay.
ordinance.
All right.
Move to approve.
There's a motion on the floor by Commissioner House to approve that. It's been seconded by Commissioner Tobin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Item 9 on the agenda, Commissioner Ross will present to you the 2020 roadmap of need, and with that, Commissioner Ross, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, County Manager. If everybody checks their screens at this point, you'll see a cover slide called Opportunities, Obstacles, the 2020 Roadmap of Need, and it is sponsored by what is called the Public School Forum of North Carolina, a public-private partnership devoted to improving and sustaining public education for school kids in North Carolina. And the subgroup that produces this roadmap is called the North Carolina Center for After-School Programs. The North Carolina Center for After-School Programs, NCCAP, as you can see on this slide, was established in 2002, and it actually has variations all over the country. This partnership deals with after-school providers. The gist of this entire package was trying to explain how and where children are provided opportunities for enhanced or expanded learning after the school hours. Again, it receives its funding through the public-private partnership of the Public School Forum. It's been around for a long time. It was created as a result of, as it was explained in their website, a recognition that schools in North Carolina were in terrible shape in the mid-'80s and needed drastic attention, not governed by political or other biases, but rather a focus on the kids. Therefore, you get these advocates for the youth programs after school, and they help guide where resources should most effectively be directed. There are 20 indicators of wellness in the 4 domains, and I want to take just a moment and ask you to look at this. The 4 domains are health, factors related to a kid's health, their behavior, are they staying out of trouble, education, how do they perform in terms of comparable or relative testing and performance versus their peers, and finally, economic development, which really is more an assessment of demographic factors about who's in the household, average or median income, family income, et cetera. They are designed to try and capture, and I've underlined these 3 because I think they're important. I'm probably going to have a very thinly presented position that I feel very, very concerned about kids not being in school. And the social, and again, this is right from the producers of this roadmap, the emphasis on social, emotional, and economic elements interwoven, connected for success. Every one will give us insight to where the high risk is, and I'm going to speak a little bit more about that. And the roadmap itself ranks all 100 counties, 1 to 100, and then it gives you the actual numbers. In other words, I would rank 4th out of the 7 of us because I ran the 100-yard dash in 12 seconds. And that's the kind of comparable you'll see as we go forward. Dare County, by the way, spoiler alert, has done extraordinarily well, okay? I'm really doing this to thank, congratulate, recognize, appreciate all of the various agencies, educators, community organizations, charitable groups, religious and faith-based organizations that drive the results you're going to see.
And parents.
And obviously the parents, of course. Thank you, Jim. You're absolutely correct. And what I've shown you here is that under the health category, you see 5 different indicators, if you will. I'll just go to the middle. Child fatalities per 10,000 children. Dare actually has 0. The state has a rate of 5, and we are ranked first at 0. Child obesity, we have 14% of our children, which is, if you think about Dare County schools, we have roughly 5,000 kids. So that's the universe of population we're looking at here, guys. We would rank 23rd. The average state measure was 16%. That helps you clear the slide and see what the comparables are and then our rank. Behavior and safety. Skip the first one for a moment because that needs a little more explanation. But the ones that caught my eye, children in Dare's Department of Social Services and child abuse neglect. Guys, we're doing really well there. I mean, even 1 is too much in abuse neglect. But compared to the state average of 9 per 1,000 children, 3.4 is really quite low, and that's good. That puts us ranked 8th. Overall in youth behavior, as you can see in the headline, is 19th in North Carolina. Now let's take just a second on juvenile delinquency. We rank next to last, 99. How can that be, right? Everybody's thinking, what are you doing, Rob? Well, I've been drilling on this for about a week now. I've been talking to the people at the Public School Forum, at the North Carolina Center for After School Programs. I've talked to our school board. I've talked to our senior administrators at the school. And the data appears to be a measurement and or reporting anomaly. Today, I spoke to the sheriff because these juvenile delinquency is defined as the delinquency rate or number of delinquent complaints received by court services offices per 1,000 students, okay? And the key indicator here would be something characterized in the Department of Public Safety definition as a serious offense. Well, in these data, it indicated we had 87 total complaints that were serious, 99 minor complaints, for a rate of 47 complaints of delinquency per 1,000 students. Now, by way of context, Wake County, everybody knows Wake County?
Oh, yeah.
Has a rate of 7 per 1,000. So we are 7 times higher delinquent than Wake County. Is anybody buying that?
Nope.
I'm not. No rational person is. And I am still pursuing it. I have spoken with a gentleman here in town who works for the Department of Public Safety and is court counselor, field services specialist, who is researching this and will get back to me. The number appears, if I had to speculate, that we somehow report very, very thoroughly and accurately, whereas perhaps other counties aren't quite reporting as thoroughly and accurately as Dare County. But, again, look at the others, much more relevant as a measure. In education,
And Rob?
Yes, sir.
Getting back on juvenile delinquency, I'm on the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council here in Dare County.
yes,
And our state representative that comes to our meetings quite often has all the detailed data on it. I can definitely get her in touch with you so she can.
I've got the guy. I was on with him this afternoon. He actually has every single piece of data that was submitted.
Okay.
And he said it'll take him a day or two, but he will go through all 87 and figure out what they are. I've been drilling guys for a week on this.
Well, and
Yes,
the
sir.
education thing doesn't add up when you look at the delinquency, because if you're delinquent, usually you don't perform an education like this.
Obviously, Jim, you're right. And any sane person, everyone I've talked to has said that that can't be right. Something's wrong. So if we go next to education, we ranked number 2 in the state of North Carolina, guys. Really, really outstanding. Yeah, this one, and I've shared this with Superintendent Farley and Deputy Superintendent Kinzel and others on Board of Education. And our graduation rate, our third grade proficiency, math proficiency, ACT scores, meeting or exceeding percentage of schools who are meeting the growth targets, all rank, as you can see, very, very high. I would put a little bit of a sobering comment on this, notwithstanding the fact that we are better than the state average and rank 9th in grade reading proficiency and 13th in math 1 proficiency. Guys, we're still basically saying 1/3 of our kids can't really read when they're in the 3rd grade at the 3rd grade level. And this math proficiency is given to students appropriate for their grade level. So they would get a 8th grade math test or a 5th grade math test or 10th grade math test. And 1/3 of our kids are not able to do that either. And we're really good. So it still gives us pause. And in my discussions with the administration, we recognize that achieving 95% simply isn't realistic in a population as large and diverse as ours. But we do believe 80% of proficiency achievement for both of those measures can be achieved and is a goal that they're striving for.
What's the ACT?
That is like the achievement test, like an
Okay,
SAT
okay.
test, only called the ACT.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and the average score is 18.5, ours is 20.1. You know, super scores are like 24, 25, Bob. That's really, really high end.
Yeah.
Economic development, again, these are some of the stats that, in my opinion, tend to be correlation stats. In other words, we are higher in median household income, lower in child poverty. The unemployment rate, again, these were all pre-COVID
Pre-COVID.
pandemic, so
A
you
lot
can't
higher
really.
than that now.
Yeah. Adults with a degree, BSBA degree or a single-parent household, you tend to see, again, I don't focus on the unemployment rate because it ranked 82, but we know what kind of seasonality we have, so it's not really a key indicator. Much more correlation to child poverty, single-parent household, median household income. And you can see those are very strong, which again, if you're looking for correlating factors, the education result is very strong. And on the health factors, you saw again a much lower teen pregnancy, child fatalities. That's where you find your correlation factors. Overall then, and I simply, again, I used Washington County in our comparatives because I'm a good friend of our colleague Tracy Johnson, Commissioner in Washington County, also part of the Albemarle Commission. And these are the factors that we on that commission deal with in many of the discussions we have with the Area Agency on Aging, North Carolina Economic Development and Jobs Centers, Job Support Centers. And I've also listed there Orange County. Now, one of the research items I found was a high degree of, how should I say this, concern that perhaps all of the teen delinquency stats are not fully reported there. We don't have data, but in Orange County. But let's just go down and look at children in DSS per 1,000. we're very low. Orange is higher, and in Washington County, 12.8, literally 5 times, almost 5 times our rate. Look at the third grade reading proficiency, guys. Again, we proudly look at 64 in a high rank, Washington 36, Math 1, 28. I will share with you that I had a pre-meeting with our executive committee of the Albemarle Commission, and we have been the beneficiaries of several grants. I was going to bring this up at commissioner business, but I think it may fit here. 3 separate COVID-related CARES grants from the feds totaling about $1 million to $1.1 million have been issued to Albemarle Commission. My point to my fellow board members, or at least on the executive group, to bring to the board was this was not budgeted. It is a tremendous financial benefit for the commission. What can we do with them? And I've shared, this data came from Tracy Johnson, our chair, and I've shared it with the other Albemarle Commission board members. I said, we must not stand by and see these kinds of stats from one of our member counties. Why can we not devote these funds to support what might be going on at home with the challenges of school closing, distance learning? Can we not have the schools adopt a tutoring program and we will underwrite the cost through Albemarle Commission? Can we not do something for these kids? And I said, let's not go down the bureaucratic road of, well, here's the 9 reasons that we can't do it, Rob. Let's find me the one reason we can do it. So I don't know, they may be upset with me, but I'm going to be beating that drum with Albemarle Commission pretty hard. But you can see the correlation to some of the results in single-parent households, 59%. That's again, about double ours. What emerged from the study was what they called a story of 2 North Carolinas. The dark blue stretching from upper right to lower left, there's your 4th quartile. And within the Albemarle Commission, it would include Washington, Terrell, Hyde, and Pasquotank. 40% of the counties in there are in the bottom quartile, and Gates, Camden, Currituck, and Dare, another 40% are in the first. So it is a tale of 2 North Carolinas, guys. And I'll get to the closing slide for why I'm sharing this story. We're very high, as you can see, relative to our fellow counties here in the state. We are quite fortunate. Our economy, as Danny was saying earlier, his business is booming. They're having a great season. We're doing well. We have great schools, active community organizations, superb county social services. We have neighbors who are not faring as well. And I share this with you all to bring out an awareness which may or may not have been obvious to everyone. And you may be hearing more from me, especially regarding this cross-county collaborative effort on Albemarle Commission. So with that, any questions, guys? Any questions that I might be able to answer? Yes, sir.
Rob, I got one. So back to the juvenile delinquency, what triggers a child to be put in that category? What kind of offense?
I'll tell you, there are what they've characterized, Irvin, as the serious offenses were defined, and I don't know what all these mean, Class F through I offenses, A1 misdemeanor assault, serious weapons or property damage claims. So if any law enforcement or official is notified of a complaint of a juvenile under any of those, that would be characterized as serious. They have these, as defined terms. They have a minor as a defined term to include disorderly conduct, making verbal threats, shoplifting, more of the non-physical violent but not good behavior, called minor. Those were 99 reported instances, the more serious 87. That's the number I'm focused on that seems highly questionable. Just for what it's worth, that 87 was the 2018 data. I was able to find and access the most recent 2019 data, not yet in the roadmap. 87 dropped to 15. So in 1 year, we went from 87 reported instances to 15. Once again triggers the, Jim's response. So that piece of the data, Herb, is highly suspect in my opinion and needs more research.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was thinking maybe that, maybe a paraphernalia offense and then got turned over to social services or a marijuana, a simple possession or something like that. But what you're talking about,
Yeah.
I don't see that.
The age group as defined is 6 to 15. These are not big kids driving cars, dealing marijuana. They technically can't even drive a car in this data set. So I was highly suspicious of, so what, we have 7-year-olds knocking off the liquor store? I mean, it just, there are things that don't make sense in the reporting,
agree.
and I'm on it. What I'm saying to you is, I'm on it. I will get better data, so that 99th ranking is just highly suspect. Yes, sir.
This is a great job. We have a very valuable resource here in Dare County, and I would like to invite them to engage with you. Hopefully, I can sit in on this as well. This is the Children and Youth Partnership.
I've got more coming up on that one. You're right, I'm on it.
Well, we're having a meeting tomorrow.
Are you?
Yes, sir. And
May I attend?
it'll be Zoom. Yes, sir. I'll see that you get an invite. That'll be fantastic. It's on a little bit of a supplemental thing. We're dealing with something very specific, an opportunity that's come up with Children and Youth Partnership. But if we would, in anticipation of giving, the CYP wants to do a presentation to the board sometime here in September. And in anticipation of this data here, I'd like to see if we can get a pre-meeting. I would be honored and delighted if you would sit in, maybe Wally or anybody. We have to be careful. We can't have more than 4 commissioners without it being a three. But if you got any time toward the end of this week to meet with the CYP group,
I'll make time.
Okay, all right, I'll be in touch.
Yeah. The follow-on to that, Danny, is your email triggered a recent email that you responded to Ms. Emily Kenyon from the Child and Youth Partnership. And I followed that up a bit and call out to NC State, Mr. Overman. Wolfpack showed up big. The North Carolina, I'm going to expand. Can I expand on this a minute?
Yeah, go ahead,
Dennis?
go ahead.
The university has a group called their Institute of Emerging Ideas. This was contained in the email from Ms. Kenyon. And I sent, I think, everybody an email suggesting that if you get a moment, it's really worth your time to click on the link because they conduct podcasts every week. And I'm looking at Wally for a moment just because he's an alum. These podcasts run 30 minutes, but they are then concisely summarized that you can get through in about 4. So it's not like go read a big tome. And the 2 in particular are labeled numbers 210, which was on July 30th, and podcast 212, which was on August 12th. The first topic, crisis of opportunity in childcare. That was the one that triggered your email. That we are facing literally a crisis in young children and outside the home child care.
3 out of 4 in Dare County are closed right now.
That's correct.
Yes.
That's correct. And they make comments like, this is critical to establishing a healthy foundation in these kids because we don't get to do it over. Once we miss it, we miss it. And I was going through this, and I was thinking of you, Danny, because you were very good. Thank you for responding to Ms. Kenyon. And then I looked at 212, which speaks to online virtual K-12 education. And I've summarized a few takeaways. Seat time, if one considers seat time. This is all taken from that podcast, by the way, of their expert panel, does not equal mastery. So the fact that we may have a high percentage kids sitting in seats in front of a screen does not indicate mastery. And there's been a great deal of reference recently, kind of a grassroots response to something called academic pods. Everybody hear of an academic pod? Small group of kids. You have a teacher, retired teacher, a counselor, an educator, even a volunteer that can teach, that works with kids, because the significant downside of the stresses placed on isolation, the kids, their families, adults in the family, in the home, not working, having to quit jobs, if they are still fortunate enough to be working, because they have no place to send their child. They cannot afford what little child care is out there. It is a looming, looming crisis for our community.
Yes, it is.
They talk about in this K-12 education, the parent's role is critical to a kid succeeding online. How many parents do we have, single-parent household, where the parent may have to struggle to make ends meet?
31%.
Yeah, how involved are they full-time helping their child online, that 9-year-old? Give me a break. So I'm going to be, this is, Bob, you and I had a chat this morning, and you probably detected some skepticism in my voice.
No, really.
These are the things that are emerging in the data, not me making them up. And they're very concerning to me. And finally, one of the speakers, and I wrote down the quote, said, many districts across the state, rightly or wrongly, have concluded that we will sacrifice education in favor of complete safety. You can consider that. You can weigh the pros and cons of that, the risk reward of that, but 100% complete safety, not a single case will be accepted or we shut it down. Anyway, when you brought up the Child and Youth Partnership, this was the data I pulled out of those two podcasts, numbers 210 and 212, that were really insightful. So thank you for that, and thank you to Emily Kenyon for having forwarded that to us. Okay, sir. Thank you. That concludes my part.
Thank you, Rob. Very good. Very good stuff. Appreciate you sharing that. County Manager?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Item 10 on the agenda is a resolution recognizing the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment.
Yes, this was brought to my attention recently, so I asked to put this on the agenda to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. So I asked the county, I'll present this for you guys to consider approving. And Bobby, will you read that resolution, please?
This is a resolution celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Whereas an organized movement to enfranchise women began on July 1848 at a convention in Seneca Falls, New York. And whereas after more than 7 decades of continued efforts of brave and courageous women, referred to as suffragists and suffragettes, who sacrificed family, their personal lives, and financial resources to gain equal rights for women, especially the right to vote, the women's suffrage movement led to passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States in 1919, with ratification by the states by August 18, 1920. And whereas the National Women's Suffrage Association dissolved in 1920 to create the League of Women Voters of the United States to register voters and educate all voters. And whereas women today, constituting a majority of the voters in our state and the nation, are running for office in higher numbers and are more active in the election process than ever before in history. And whereas voting rights are the core to our democracy, and the promotion of equal access to all voting citizens in the county ensures the promise for a better future. Now therefore be it resolved that the Dare County Board of Commissioners recognizes and celebrates the 100th anniversary of women gaining the right to vote and the historic impact and citizen engagement and accomplishment for the civic life of the community, the state, and the nation. Adopted this the 17th day of August 2020.
Pleasure of the board.
Move to approve.
Motion to, second.
There's a motion on the floor by the Vice Chairman to approve the resolution as presented, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Bateman. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
Item 11 would be the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, you have the approval of the minutes from July 20th. You have the retirement of Deputy Sheriff K-9 Bady, You have the Southern Albemarle Association Annual Meeting Invitation List. You have disaster debris monitoring contracts for Kill Devil Hill, Southern Shores, Kitty Hawk, Manteo, and Duck. You have the Dare County Comprehensive Disaster Management Services contract. You have an MOU between Dare County and Kill Devil Hills for the relocation of a public water supply connection. You have the interlocal agreements with the municipalities within Dare County per the Dare County plan for the NC COVID-19 Relief Fund, the tax collector's report, an amendment for the architectural contract for the animal shelter construction, Dare County Department of Health and Human Services Public Health Division COVID-19 funding, and the Jim Gentle Expert Memory Care Grant.
Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
There's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Tobin to approve the consent agenda as presented. It's been seconded by Commissioner Ross and House. Any further questions?
I would like to say that the retirement of Deputy Sheriff K-9 Bady, may he have all the milk bones he wants for the rest of his life. He has served Dare County well and the citizens of Dare County relentlessly, and I have seen him in action. He is a good dog.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Next are your board appointments. You have the Dare County Center Advisory Board. The terms expire for Rob Ross, Emily Hall, Mitchell Bateman, and Samantha Brown. They would all like to be reappointed for a 3-year term. John Sabunka does not wish to be reappointed, and the advisory board recommends that Pamela Zaffra fill that vacancy. You have applications from Stephanie Harkness Moxley and Pamela Zaffra.
Move to reappoint Rob Ross, Emily Hall, Mitchell Bateman, and Samantha Brown, and to appoint Pamela Zaffra.
Motion on the floor by the vice chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner House. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
Next is the Health and Human Services Board. The Health and Human Services Board voted to recommend the reappointment of Dr. Mark Grossman, Wally Overman, and Alexis Hodges. Due to other commitments, Frank Hester declined reappointment. At this time, there's no recommendation to fill the vacancy. You have applications from Janine Sewell, George Carver, Staten Martin, Al Moran, and Chris Vlahos.
Recommendation to appoint Janine Sewell to the vacant spot and reappoint the existing board members.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor by Commissioner Bateman, is seconded by Commissioner Couch. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous.
And then your upcoming board and committee appointments. In September, you have the Health and Human Services Board where 4 terms expire. You do not have any in October. And in November, you have 1 term for the Older Adult Services Advisory Council. And that would be your agenda, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, County Manager. That brings us to item 13, Commissioner's Business and County Manager's Attorney Business. I would like to ask Commissioner Tobin if he would start it off this evening, please.
Okay, first off, I'd like to say that we had a meeting with 10 fishermen from Hatteras and up here with Donald Trump Jr. We spent about 15 minutes with him, and basically we discussed access mostly to the ocean. And he agreed to try to set up a meeting for a few of us to go up and meet with Mark Meadows, the Chief of Staff, and further discuss it. So that was a very good development in our dredging issues, and also trying to get Hatteras Inlet identified as a federal channel, because right now we can't use federal dollars for it. Also, an update on the dredge for you, Rob.
This was a personal request from me to Jim.
It was discovered that there's a new requirement by the Coast Guard for the nearshore shipping that you have to have another auxiliary generator. So it's gone back into the process with Conrad to readjust the bid, and we expect to have that back this week. And also, I'd like to ask everybody to keep Sheriff Jeff Ambrose in their prayers. Jeff is currently at Norfolk General Hospital in ICU. He's had some issues with his heart and AFib, and he had a pretty severe episode the other day. And Jeff's a good friend of mine. We served in the volunteer fire department there in Mans Harbor together many years ago, and he's a great guy all around. So if everybody could say a prayer for him, that'd be great. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, on a couple of items. One, the Audit Committee, looking at Commissioner Irvin, we will be meeting in early October. I believe it's October 5th, right after our board meeting. And looking at Finance Director Clausen, that date will work for you and Ernie and the group? Yep, okay, I'm getting the nod. So I think it'll be October the 5th for the Audit Committee. Do not anticipate any issues, but we'll come back, obviously, report to the full board any results. On a similar note, seems a bad evening for that. A longtime Nags Head resident and good friend of the Nags Head community, Mr. Ward Moore, passed over the weekend, and just want to extend our condolences and sympathies to his wife, Debbie. Ward will be missed. He was a very, very good man. Number 3, just wanted to read to you a letter that I prepared and sent to the Virginian Pilot Letters to the editor section, and received contact and word back that they felt, yes, we will be able to print this next week, and unfortunately they did not. So I would just like to express and read this brief letter. It's titled, "Our Police Are Essential to a Civilized Society." I've followed with increasing alarm the news stories of anti-police rhetoric and calls to defund or worse, eliminate police forces in many of our larger major cities. These actions are wrong, full stop. They will have very severe downside repercussions for the ignored majority of citizens living there. For example, New York City has disbanded a highly trained plainclothes unit while removing $1 billion from their police budget. Seattle, in what I consider a dangerously ill-conceived move, is considering planning to cut its police force by as much as 50%. And then there's Minneapolis, which has suffered greatly. Their city council has pledged to dismantle its entire police force and replace it with
Social services?
what? Generalities, but no specifics have been provided. These actions, along with the increasingly hostile attacks by elected officials across the spectrum against police, will have very, very severe long-term effects. Under the guise of reimagining police, they're putting citizens in grave danger because, really, who believes crime and lawlessness will go down when the police are removed? Nationally, there are leaders, and you know who they are, who fully agree with a defunding removal program. Although some of their leadership claim not to support defunding, but rather simply absolutely agree that we need to redirect police funding, I believe it is a distinction without a difference. No civilized society will survive without professional law enforcement. None ever have, none will. My position is an unqualified position of support for the dedicated men and women on our police force. I trust in my town's police officers, my county sheriff, and the state patrol. These people are friends, they're neighbors. My family and I rely on them, as do all of you, every day. These officers sacrifice and serve in order to protect the safety and well-being of our communities. Are there exceptions when this trust may be broken? In rare instances, sadly, there are. But those offenders are also held accountable and face justice under something called rule of law, another principle that we cannot compromise. A frightening glimpse of the future can be found with no police in it by simply looking at the city of Portland, facing its, I think, 84th or 85th consecutive night of violence and rioting. I saw this morning the city of Seattle had a massive amount of violent protest and rioting where a number of police officers were injured with explosives, rocks, bottles, and 18 arrests were made. Anyone who believes in a secure nation governed by the rule of law will be terrified by scenes like these. I know I am. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Ross, appreciate it. Commissioner House?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's not been a whole lot going on fisheries as far as newsworthiness. There's been a few rumblings, but nothing major. Up until August 13th on the United States Senate floor, Senator Tillis and Senator Sullivan from Alaska had introduced Senate Bill 494, which is American Fisheries Advisory Act, and they were trying to get it approved for unanimous consent because there were no objections to it at all. And during that conversation, Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer had Senate Bill 904, which is the Fluke Fairness Act, which was a quota reallocation of the summer flounder, which would actually take the summer flounder quota, a good portion of it, away from North Carolina and move it to the northern states, New York being the primary state that would receive that quota. Senator Tillis stood up on the Senate floor, debated it, and objected to it. Got it blocked from passing.
Right, I saw that, yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Senator Tillis, for looking out for our commercial fishermen here. I do not have a pet of the week. Evidently, we're still rumbling with COVID and getting film crews and pets together, but please check out the SPCA's website if you're looking for a companion. Just like with what the chairman was saying earlier about relieving stress. If a new puppy and kitten can't relieve some of your stress, there's no help for you. So you definitely go out and pick one up, and they will definitely love you and definitely take your mind away from everything else that's going on. Our day in history. This one kind of hits home and happened a long time ago on August 17th. A first group of colonists sent by Sir Walter Raleigh under the charge of Ralph Lane lands in the New World to create the Roanoke Colony on Roanoke Island off the coast of present-day North Carolina. This was in 1585. Following the failure of the 1585 settlement, a second colony led by John White landed on the same island in 1587 and became known as the Lost Colony due to the unexplained disappearance of its population. So the very first colony that came here in 1585 landed on this day. And that's your day in history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Vice Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just like to go back to earlier in the meeting when you pointed out that our service pen recipients totaled 185 years of service. And that has got to be a record. Last month, if you recall, we had 130 years of service, and I thought that was a record, but this certainly smashes that. So, Lord knows what we're gonna have next month.
Right. That's what happens when you have a lot of longevity with county employees.
That's right. But congratulations to all of these folks, and how blessed we are as a county to have folks that work for the county as they do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Bady?
Sir. So, Bob, thank you for your little prep talk about releasing the pressure. But I'd like to kind of talk a little bit. Last few days, it's kind of hit me in my business as well as in talking to other businesses, the great amount of pressure that our coworkers under. Say, for instance, in my business, I have 9 moms. And the big thing, they're in these little groups, and they're talking about, what are you going to do? I mean, I haven't heard what our plans yet, and we're going for orientation Monday, and all these conversations, and they're worried about their kids. These moms are, basically speaking, becoming teachers. It's a big thing.
Yep.
And our superintendent, my understanding, they're doing a great job in getting the information out there to them, but these moms are becoming teachers. Now, at the same time, they also have to be the employee. They're working too. So they're coming to my establishment, for instance, at 8 o'clock in the morning and working. They have to even have childcare, or they have to not work that day and they have to come work at nighttime. So they're under an immense amount of pressure. A lot of them are single moms. And I'm concerned about that. I mean, there's nothing we can do to change it. Our governor made the decision to have us isolate and work at home and to have the students at home. So there's nothing that we as a board here can do about that. But it worries me big time, the pressure that these people are under. One mother came to
Sacrifice.
me with tears in her eyes, and she's got a special needs kid. How are we gonna meet the needs of this special needs kid from home? She's gonna meet with the guidance counselors, there's a 504 program they're designing for it. This is all different times and everything. The other problem we have is because in our industry, you mentioned that unemployment rate was, I think there was 5 point something at one time.
5.1.
To North Carolina, now it's 7.9%. In Dare County, my industry, which is hospitality and restaurant industry, is 22.9%. But when I was on the conversation this morning with the employment security commission, trying to get help, I have had the same job listings since March. I'm down 8 employees, and not one person's applied from that entity to come work in my restaurant.
Insane.
But there are 22.9% in that industry are applying for unemployment.
It's like it's upside down.
It's
I
up,
know,
yeah.
it's just absolutely crazy. And so my folks they're working double time, they're working overtimes, and they're having to go through all this stuff. So it's a stressful time for everybody in Dare County and clear across our North Carolina and across our nation. And I really feel for them. I mean, Danny, you don't have any small kids anymore, do you?
That I do.
Okay, well, you know then. You know,
Yes. Oh,
you're-
absolutely. It's nuts.
And you've got a family and a wife and so forth. A lot of these people are single moms, and they're working from week to week.
Just like my daughter, she has 4 kids,
Wow.
and all 4 of them are obviously in different grades. And she's got each one in a different room on a computer, and she's running back and forth to each one of them while trying to do her job from working at home.
Yeah, the other thing is the childcare. One of the moms told me that she pays $300 a week childcare. She's got it, evidently.
Well, that's not surprising whatsoever. I mean.
$300 a week.
Yeah, I mean, that's standard. I mean, it's crazy.
I don't
That's
see how-
absolutely
I don't see
crazy.
how they're doing it, so.
Yeah.
What a
Guys,
mess.
take a look at those 2 podcasts. Again, they're not that long.
I got your
Get through
email,
them.
and I've
Yeah.
got it on my
They're,
agenda. I got to find
they're
time.
spot on your topic,
Yeah.
Urban. Honestly, spot on.
So we're done.
Thank you, Commissioner Baker. Commissioner Couch?
I think this is I look forward to the Children and Youth Partnership coming up and discussing this. Hopefully, we won't have a overwhelming agenda when we come up in our September meeting, and we can discuss this. We've got some very talented people on the Children and Youth Partnership, as you said about Emily Kenyon. She's a early childhood specialist, a licensure specialist. She's on a lot of state talks and stuff with what's going on there. We've got the YMCA is engaged in this. So a lot of these things that we're discussing tonight, I think it's time we hear we hear from the Visitors Bureau about the state of our visitors. We hear from the Chamber of Commerce about the state of our small businesses. So let's hear from the Children and Youth Partnership on the state of our children. And Irvin and Rob both, I mean, these were statistics here that were just absolutely eye-opening, and it's a real thing, and we need to start getting out in front of it. I think it's very timely with both of what you've had to say. Don't have a lot, just there with Tom Murphy. These things seem to kind of run in spurts. I was on the school board 2013, actually 2 terms, and I developed a huge respect for the Manteo elementary principal, a lady named Mary Ann Wetzel. and she passed last week. And she was so highly intelligent, such a skilled professional. And here on Roanoke Island, it's a small insular community. They're very much engaged. Everybody is intertwined, and she did a masterful job of handling the social dynamics of this town in a way that I marveled at. There's been some news coming out from Dare County Schools about that. Second thing, it's about 20 years ago, a young surfer showed up, Christian surfer, showed up on Hatteras Island, a guy by the name of Jeremy Woolard. And he started a church. He saw a need and started a church. And from nothing, I mean, he didn't come down there for a plan. He came down there to surf. And he saw this need and began a church that actually has morphed into what are now 3 very active, thriving churches down there. Now, there was a little bit, as we're apt to happen, there's the famous saying, there's no mean like church mean, and it happens in churches. And so Jeremy always felt that he was responsible for some of the fracture, but something good did come out of that. God worked for good in that. But I've got sad news that Jeremy had relocated down to New Smyrna Beach. He had fallen on some hard financial times. He's a highly intelligent guy, was a graduate, college grad, and also a graduate of Roanoke Bible School up in Pasquotank County, up in Elizabeth City. But he had showed up missing. They actually found him very close yesterday to his home, and we're not exactly sure what happened, but that's quite a legacy that man left and didn't know it. So, thank you for listening.
Danny, how's Nancy Griffin doing?
Nancy will be in our meeting tomorrow. She is very engaged. She's having some mobility issues. It was a pretty serious medical issue that happened to her. But she is sharp as a tack. She'll talk to you about quantum physics. And but she's doing pretty good. Children and Youth Partnership has put Sarah Sampson in as the interim directive. It's a very active board. It's a big board. Beth Story here on Roanoke Island is the chairman of the CYP board. And it's been all hands on deck. Bonnie Brumbelow, Julie Stewart, Carla Heppard, Emily, of course, and Sarah. Sarah's just doing a masterful job. She's a very steady, even-keeled fill-in. So we've been very fortunate. There's been no drop-off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Couch. I have just a couple of other items to go over. Just recently, I was contacted by the chair of the Jeanette's Pier Advisory Council, and unbeknownst to me, that we have 2 appointments to that board, and several years back, this board appointed Mr. Tauber to one of those positions, and he serves admirably on that board. It was brought to my attention that we have another spot, and so if you recall, I sent an email out to you, and Commissioner House has indicated he'd like to fill that spot. So my recommendation is we appoint Commissioner House to that second spot on that Jeanette's Pier, and I'd like to make that in the form of a motion, if I may.
I'll second.
And it's been seconded by Commissioner Tobin. Any questions? Those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Steve, for stepping up to the plate. And
Thank you, gentlemen, for your support.
agreeing to do that. The second item I have, and I know Commissioner Ross is passionate about this, about our kids getting back to school, and most of us are. There's no question about it, but we have to deal with the cards that are dealt us for right now. Commissioner Bateman, I understand your employees angst about their kids learning virtually. I attended Superintendent Farley's department head meeting today. As most of you all are aware, school started today. I can only tell you that having spent an hour and a half with his department heads, Dare County rises above any school system throughout the state as far as I'm concerned. They have been on top of this since this COVID breakout. They are doing everything humanly possible to get our kids certainly educated online. Every single student has a Chromebook. A message from every single teacher went out to every single kid today welcoming them. They have multiple things in place to help the parents with this. Irvin, I know that they're stepping up to the plate and having to do this, and just like your daughter has to deal with it. There's some extra timing later in the day if a kid doesn't get their lesson done after the parents have worked throughout the day, even as late as 5, 6 o'clock. They've got online stuff that they can come back and do. Those kids in need, those that you mentioned, they're going to have sessions for them. So they've gone way beyond to do this, to make it as easy as possible as they can for their students to learn. They're doing. I had a concern about, and I didn't have any other way to ask the question other than be straight up with them. You know, they got a free pass to move up to the next level. How are the teachers dealing with that? The first 2 weeks, they are going to monitor the kids, do a lot of testing from that standpoint virtually to see where they are, so if they don't meet that next level grade, that they're going to put tools in place to adjust that, to help them. So they're just got every single kind of group put together that they can to help with every single situation throughout the school system and to deal with it. So I came away really, really feeling good about what they've done and put in place. I asked Superintendent Farley, you know, he has these department heads meetings weekly. He told me, he said, Bob, I'm happy to have any other county commissioner attend so that you can come to these meetings and listen and ask questions so that you can get a comfort level within yourself to know that the school system's doing everything humanly possible that they can to make sure that these kids are treated well. They continue their meals program. They've got that going. They've done a tremendous job there. So once again, I came away feeling really, really good with everything that they had put in place. I would encourage you to reach out to Superintendent Farley if you're interested in attending his department head meeting. He'll welcome your presence. So please do that. And then certainly last but not least, I would hope that each and every one of you would keep Mary Helen Goodloe in your thoughts and prayers for the passing of Tom Murphy. True American individual, great person, great human being, and I'm sorry for her loss in the passing of Tom. With that being said, County Manager.
Yes, sir, I have 2 things for you. Each year, the Veterans of Far Award honors a first responder who's shown outstanding service to their community. This year, paramedic Darren Hager with Dare County EMS received the VFW EMT of the Year award. Darren's a paramedic. He's the recipient of this year's award. He works for Dare County Public Safety, and he was nominated for the award by Dare County Public Safety. Paramedic Hayter began his career in Dare County in October of 2017. And prior to that, he worked as a lieutenant in an EMS department in Western North Carolina for many years. In the 2 years that Darren's been with Dare County, he's excelled. He provides excellent patient care. It's a cornerstone of his performance and one of his many qualities to our community, and our community benefits from that, said Chief Collins. Hager also has a passion for teaching. He instructs the department's quarterly continuing education classes and is an adjunct instructor at the College of the Albemarle. This is a quote from Chief Collins: "Teaching EMS providers from the newest student attempting to gain a foothold in the industry to the most tenured provider takes patience, strength, commitment, encouragement, subordinate, and the intelligence to produce quality provider outcomes. These qualities are consistently demonstrated by Darren, which have resulted in catapulting him to a place of admiration among his students and peers." Not only does Hager excel in the classroom setting, he is equally adept at functioning in a field training officer role, where he is a preceptor for students bridging the academic classroom into the real-world street setting. He is a mentor that his coworkers turn to for direction and advice long after the formal education process is complete. Additionally, Darren served in the U.S. Navy, where he was an Engineer 1, and in the U.S. Army as a combat medic. He has a total of 6 years military service and a total of 24 years in public safety. As evidenced by his years of public service and his commitment to teaching others, Hager is a dedicated public servant and is more than deserving of receiving the VFW EMT Public Service Citation. Darren received this award earlier, I think the last week of July. Because of COVID-19, we aren't bringing people in, but I wanted to recognize him for his outstanding service and for this honor that he received. So congratulations to our own Darren Hager.
That's quite a resume.
It is. The second thing I have is I continue to have bi-weekly telephone conversations with Sarah Odio at DFI with regard to our workforce housing effort, and they are still engaged and they are still working on that. They're unable to travel still. The UNC system has kept them all at home, so they're having a struggle to do a lot of the things that they would normally do, but they are working forward with that. They've been looking for property. They found that work challenging, as we knew it was going to be. and they have found that they think they may have a property or two that will work. They have found some properties that we thought might work that will not work, and they continue to engage in that. They've met with the chamber and are working with them on some funding and some things that might can occur from the chamber side. And they're also going to engage with Currituck to see if there's anything we can do in conjunction with them as well. The survey that we had talked about at a previous meeting, that survey is ready to go out at our request. They've held that survey until after Labor Day. We were concerned that the business community would be swamped this time of year and wouldn't respond, and so it wouldn't be effective for us. That should go out after Labor Day. And near the end of September, they'll come back to us and meet with some of us individually, and then some of us and come in to the board to make a more formal presentation just to update you and start working into the decision process. So that's kind of where we are. We don't have a call scheduled this week. I'll talk to her again next week, and at the next board meeting, I'll follow up with you again as to where we are and how that's progressing. Any questions? That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, County Manager. Finance Director, Mr. Clausen, do you have anything for us this evening?
Just we'll have the contract amendment for Barn Hill Construction for the COA demolition on your next agenda.
Okay, great. That's music to my ears. Mm-hmm. Let me know. I want to be out there the first day.
Hard hat and a sledge.
I want one of them bricks. I want one of them bricks.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Dave.
I want the gymnasium floor.
Public Information Officer, Ms. Dorothy Hester. Good evening again.
Good evening. The only item I was going to mention was late this afternoon, the newsletters for each of the 3 divisions for Parks and Recreation released programs for September. So they
Right.
worked with Health and Human Services to put together some offerings. And I think in light of some of the things you all are talking about, it does offer some opportunities, safe opportunities for kids. So you can check that out online. When you go to the homepage, there's a slide, and each division, so the Fessenden Center for Hatteras Island, the Northern Beach Division, and then the Roanoke Island Mainland Division, each has offerings.
Super.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Dorothy. I got a question. We haven't talked about this since the first of the year. And I know we put out a list of 150 ways to celebrate our 150th anniversary. Where are we? Are we just, I hate the fact to think that we're just going to let 2020 go by and not do anything with respects to our 150th anniversary. So,
We did have to edit that list.
yes,
slightly.
I know you.
We're at 19.
Yes, yes.
We do still have that list up there. We did edit it some. Most all of our activities, as you know,
Right.
had to be canceled.
Right.
The Big Island Farm
Yeah.
event.
Sad.
We still have a float.
Yeah,
So
Christmas
if
parade.
there are some Christmas parades.
Well, why can't we just put that float out on the street and all of us seven get on it and ride around the county?
We could. I mean, we could come up with some
Do it Labor Day weekend.
some neighborhood or different areas where it goes around. I mean, we could, but I am thinking that there may be some Christmas parades. I know Hatteras Village usually has one, Manteo. So I've sort of talked with Public Works, and we kind of
I
have.
mean, we could be like the village people. I mean, House could dress up like Manteo.
You're gonna have to grow.
Jim could
Grow
dress
your
up
beard
like
again.
Sir Walter Raleigh.
I'll do Blackbeard.
Yeah, Blackbeard,
We can do that. We'll. If you're serious.
I'm serious.
Okay, well, then
I'm serious.
I think we would want to wait until things
Right.
slow down a
I
little
understand.
bit. And I don't know, the season may, I know some people are talking about the season possibly moving out further into the fall. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Just real quickly, we were talking about how everybody was booked through October. It's gone into, they're booking for Christmas here.
Yeah.
It hadn't been a mass,
Well,
but they're asking.
I am told that there are over 900 MLS listings in Dare County on the MLS listing. And I know there's a section behind me that is, they can't build them fast enough.
We're running out of inventory in Hatteras for sale.
Yeah.
Everything is selling. Most everything is selling.
But there's a section behind me that they can put 90-some homes and they can't build them fast enough.
In the past 2 days, 2 people have told me they're moving here permanently.
Yeah.
A family and then Curtis Colgate. I don't know if you know Curtis.
I don't.
I did want to follow up with something Dorothy said there. Wednesday is National Aviation Day, and I'll be, Beth and Dorothy were able to get one of the 150th banners. I think we have 2. But for the First Flight Society, I'll be manning a booth there, and I've got a couple of books, and I'm pretty well versed in Dare County history, so if I get engaged by anybody, I'll tell them why the county was created, 1870, and where it came from, and some of the political things that were going on, social. We were just coming out of the Civil War, and we were a result of that, of the social and political strife and the inlets.
Right.
We'll
Thank you,
think about
Dorothy.
that, yes.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to item 14, the county manager has asked for a closed session.
Mr. Chairman, we don't need that closed session. The opioid conversation that I was going to have with you, we won't have that phone call until Wednesday. So
Oh, okay,
we'll do it at the next meeting.
okay. Is there any other business then to come before the board? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn until 9 a.m. on September the 8th?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Tobin, seconded by Commissioner House. Any further business? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.